across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
A very, very good morning to you. Thank you very much indeed for joining me. This is Talk, the home of common sense, with me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. Coming up to 3 minutes past 10 o'clock, and goodness me, a lot to talk about today. You know, of course, how Kemi Badenoch wasn't going to announce any policies for at least 2 years. Well, funnily enough, apparently 2 years has gone by much quicker than we all thought it had. We're all ageing horribly, everybody, because now there is a policy. She has announced that migrants who claim benefits in Britain will be banned from ever becoming British citizens under her leadership if she were Prime Minister. Also, even from getting indefinite leave to remain. And there are a lot more people getting that. And you'll have to wait a lot longer to get it. I think most of you, as I was, pretty stunned by how darn easy and quickly someone can get the right to live here forever, or even citizenship in this country. Because apparently, I mean, you know, you may as well just go to a pound shop and get British citizenship. It's handed out effectively like confetti to anyone who might want it. Pass a little test, show you can speak some English, job done. We'll be talking about all of that. Also going to be talking about civil service officials risk losing their jobs unless they find ways to save money from their Whitehall budgets. That's what ministers will announce today. Absolute codswallop. It won't happen. They'll be moved to another job, probably paid more and given a promotion. Plus, latest on the abject waste of money that we are seeing constantly by the bodies that we employ. West Yorkshire Police Force has been slammed for wasting £1.4 million on employing diversity, equity and inclusion staff, doing absolutely nothing of any use, as well as training them as well. Just extraordinary amounts of money spent on this nonsense. Plus, more nuclear plants are going to be built across the country with we're told, the hope of creating thousands of highly skilled jobs as ministers slash red tape and take on the NIMBYs to construct nuclear reactors across Britain. Again, the planning, the building of runways and nuclear reactors and the like is the one decent thing this government might actually achieve. But will they ever actually achieve it? Well, we shall wait and see. So much to talk about today. I mean, loads more coming up, including Donald Trump and his Gaza plan, and Donald Trump and his bid to remove men from women's sports. It's not a ban on trans at the Olympics in LA. It's a ban on men competing in the wrong category because they're not women. And they know that because they call themselves trans women, which would mean that they're men. It's everyone keeping up at the back because an awful lot of Democrats and Labour voters and Lib Dem voters here don't seem to understand some basic biology, which, by the way, most 4-year-olds can understand. Anyway, all that, plenty more besides coming up, and I'm delighted to say joining us throughout the show, as usual, on a Thursday, Philip Ingram, MBE, former senior military intelligence officer. As always, thank you for coming here.
Always pleasure.
Lovely to see you.
A lovely day it is.
And we've both gone, if you're watching us on the YouTube, you know, you can watch YouTube or your connected device, you can listen on DAB Plus radio or on your smart speaker. If you're not watching us, we're both in happy spring-like pink. Even though, of course, the weather's beautiful today down here in London. I think across most of the country as well, but probably going to be raining again tomorrow.
Well, exactly, yes. You know. But hey, this is UK.
Although
weather's entertaining.
Something I heard some nonsense on the BBC. I obviously just sort of, turn the radio off at this point. Something about it's been the hottest January on record, and so we're all going to die. That was their lead item this morning.
Oh,
lead item.
Stuff,
It's what everyone's.
Well, there's nothing else going on in the world.
Nothing else going on. Absolutely the biggest issue going on. We know. Keir Starmer a few years ago said climate change, the biggest threat to the world, to Britain. Obviously let's face it, it's what we all talk about at home, in the pubs, in our workplaces. This morning, that's the story everyone's talking about when they arrive at work, isn't it? But apparently it's been it's been the warmest ever on record. Of course, records only started about 80 years ago, so rough give or take. But also crucially, we're now past, of course, the point of no return, because everyone said if we go with 1.7 degrees warming above where we were at the pre-industrial age, so
then that's it. We're all gone.
Well, this is my thing. I don't understand why the green hysterics aren't going, well, they said if we get past this point of 1.5 warming above the before 1880, then that's it. The tipping point is gone and we're all going to die and the Earth's going to, again, flood, burn, dry. I can never remember. Each week there's a different one. But if we're past that point, then we can all relax. Let's get the coal-fired power stations back up and running.
Just chill for the last 10,000 years that humankind has
eat your
got
burgers.
Yeah.
Everyone can relax. This is a wonderful, happy day. If you're a green hysteric, hi, Greta Thunberg, this is a wonderful day. The point of no return has been passed.
We're all going to die anyway.
Yeah, relax and enjoy what the last few years before you're burnt to a cinder, or freeze to death, or die of thirst, or are flooded. It's so difficult.
We need to ask the wolf, or is it just crying wolf all the time?
It's just difficult to know which it is. But do get in touch and let me know which one you think it is this week. Anyway, we've got some stories that are actually real to talk about. Kemi Badenoch. Right, let me just go through what she's pledging. First major policy announcement as Tory leader, although she said there'd be no policies for 2 years. I wonder if this has got anything to do with the fact that Reform are riding high in the polls, not just above Tories but above Labour. 2 mentions of reform at PMQs by the Prime Minister. Unforced errors. Sort of clearly they think there's an issue. Scared, or wants reform to do better, because if reform does better, the Tories won't die. Their votes basically cancel each other out and Labour will get in next time. This is the worry. But she's basically saying that she wants plans for a dramatic tightening of rules that will allow migrants who arrive on work visas to settle permanently. So an awful lot. Huge. I mean, hundreds of thousands of people who arrive here end up settling permanently. They either get indefinite leave to remain, or they then actually can go on after that to actually claim British citizenship. She is proposing a number of things. One, if you're jobless, you're low paid, you've been claiming benefits, then no, you can't settle indefinitely in the UK, and therefore you wouldn't be allowed to then claim citizenship. She's also saying if you've entered the country legally, you're only allowed to apply for indefinite leave to remain once you've been in the country for 10 years, not the current 5 years, and after that you have to wait another 5 years before you are allowed to attempt to apply for citizenship. I mean, I think most people would just be stunned to learn that you can be here for just 5 years and not actually have to prove that you've not been a net, taker from the state. As in, you can have a job, you can work, but with all due respect, if you're in a very low-paid job or even an averagely paid job, you are not a net contributor. You're a net taker because the public services you use cost more, especially if you've got kids and they're using education, the school, they're using healthcare. I think most people would just be appalled to know how easy it is to come to this country, stay in this country, get citizenship in this country, as if it's not a great privilege and a great thing to get, but just like something that could just be handed out, like raffle tickets.
And this is where I think she's missing a trick. Everyone will criticise her for not doing this when the Tories were in for the last 14 years.
She wasn't Prime Minister. She wasn't Home Secretary.
Exactly. And the situation's changed, and it's still remaining at the forefront of politics. But I think there should be a points-based system for people who are then given a path to citizenship. Part of that points-based system is looking at whether you are a contributor to our society or a net drain on our society. And that should include language, whether you add culturally or you take away culturally, and money has to come into it as well. And you can do it for individuals, and then you do it for families. And if people don't pass the tests, then they're given a couple of years extra to pass the tests. But then they have their visas revoked completely.
You don't get a couple of years to pass the test. You've already shown that you're not going to do it by your own hook and crook. There are so many people who come to this country who start with nothing. I mean, look, we've had a number of cabinet ministers, particularly actually in the Conservative Party, even prime ministers, whose parents have come to this country with nothing sometimes, or they're just armed with a degree. They've come here and they've set up home. They've been able to send their kids to top schools, gone to university. They've done well. They're paying huge amounts of tax. I'm like, more of you, please. Thank you very much. They speak perfect English. They expect their children to be completely integrated. Yes, I've got. Absolutely. Come on in. The water's lovely. But we have far too many people come to this country who just want to take, who are not net contributors. Well, look, I think one of the things that, for me, that stuck out, apart from the full abject horror of the Pakistani grooming and rape gangs across the country, was that so many of these people had dual citizenship, so clearly were, born in another country, many of them, or again, children of migrants come to this country who were just living again a completely different lifestyle. But, I'm not entirely sure your average, local cab driver, mini cab driver or kebab shop owner in Rochdale or Rotherham, which is what a lot of these guys were doing, that was in the takeaway world. I'm not sure they're probably net contributors. And I just think it's just one of those things like, why on earth has this person been given British citizenship? What good is that? British citizenship is something that should be of a benefit to us as well.
It's a privilege as well.
But also it's like, OK, you want to make your home here, fine. Well, again, what is your contribution, as you say, culturally? I want you to speak very good English. I want you to be totally integrated into the community. I want, you want to be British, then be British.
Yes.
I wouldn't expect to go to another country, not integrate, not speak the language, and then assume their nationality. That shouldn't be what it's about. And again, I think most people, the left always go, oh, well, they're working. Oh, well, you're working, but I hate to tell you, most British people who work their socks off every day are not net contributors, even in their working years. Yeah. And that's a horrible thing. Everyone gets it. But look, do I think that the guy who empties my bins does a more useful job than me? Yes, I do. Because actually you can do without me, you can't do without him, OK? Yes. But different jobs pay different rates. And things like, so these jobs are vital. The hospital porter does a vital job, but again, is not a net contributor financially, but is a net contributor. It is a contributor in terms of the betterment of this country and improving all of our lives. But financially, we should expect that people who come from abroad are net contributors.
Yes, well, it's the people that come from abroad, and if they bring their families in with them as well, their families are net contributors. So you can't have someone who comes in to do an average job or a good job and is a net contributor to the country, but actually as a family, because they bring in their wife and children and others, and they're just taking from society the whole time. Their net contribution would have to go up to be able to be granted.
It just seems so basic, this. But again, I think a lot of the problems that Kemi Badenoch has is, she's being squeezed on both sides. Yeah. She's having to tackle these issues. I think she's actually been very sound. I think she is ideologically very sound on a lot of these issues, as herself as someone who came to this country as a child. But I think also the key thing is that she's been pushed into this policy. But here's the thing. Here's the one good thing. At least major frontline politicians are being forced to talk about this and actually talk about some proper actual measures on these issues because they've been forced to. They've been forced to by people like Nigel Farage.
Yes, I was going to say it's reform and the ascendancy of reform that is forcing the debate on both sides, both in the Labour Party,
Labour.
In the Labour Party, hugely in the Labour Party, and with the Conservatives, and they're a disruptor, and disruptors I think are the main bit of modern politics.
Nigel Farage wants to be more than a disruptor, and again, it's a question of if people have to be pushed into saying these things, can you trust they'll do them? Yeah. And given that the Tories, not under Kemi Badenoch's leadership, have promised everything. People still holding account for Boris Johnson after the Boris wave of... People always talk about, there were 800,000 migrants a year, while he was Prime Minister. No, they weren't. There were well over 1 million. That's just net migration people are talking about. Well, I want to hear from you. You've heard what Kemi Badenoch has pledged to do. Why do you think she's bringing this policy in? Do you think she actually means it? Is it enough? Or are you just horrified? Just horrified by the fact that it's been so easy all along. Particularly also, it's about, kicking out low-paid migrants. I'm sorry, you don't have a right to live here. You're not a net contributor. I'm not quite sure what... I'm not quite sure why do we still want you here? That's not xenophobic. I don't care whether they're white or black. I don't care. Are you a net contributor? What is your reaction to this? Give us a call. 0344 499 1000. Text the word TALK to 87222. You can send us a message on X at Talk TV. Lots of those already coming in. And of course, don't forget that calls are charged at the national rate. Text costs £1. Standard network rate message. We'll get your calls in about 5-10 minutes time. I want to also talk about, just very briefly, because we talked about this a lot on the show yesterday, Donald Trump's Gaza plan. Everyone loves my Gaza plan. It's gone from him saying Palestinians in Gaza, 1.82 million people, being permanently and forcibly removed from Gaza, Jordan to Egypt or wherever, to basically create this Riviera with lots of Trump hotels and casinos, no doubt, where Gaza has been. Now, then his press secretary was talking about how it was temporary removed, not forcibly. Egypt and Jordan have said, we're not taking part in this. Clearly, allies like Britain are going, are you sure about this? Do you think, what do you think about it? Does he think he actually plans to do this, and can he do this?
No, well, he probably could if he set his mind to it, but he's a disruptor. And anyone who takes something Donald Trump says like this, literally, like all the politicians around the world are doing and going, oh, this is terrible. They're just getting it wrong. We know roughly what his policy is, or he's setting the conditions out for his policy between Russia and Ukraine. He's setting out his policy with China, with the economic the economic tariffs and all the rest of it. We don't know what his policy is against Iran. He hasn't made a statement against Iran, but what he's done is he's made this very clear statement about what is going to happen in Gaza. He's had Netanyahu as the first world leader to come and see him. And he's just playing with the Middle East. Everything he's doing at the minute is throwing pebbles in the pond and watching the ripples.
It definitely undermines Hamas. They'll be going, oh, hold on a minute.
Oh, yeah.
He's making it very clear. We're on Israel's side. This British and French and this idea like, oh, we're on both sides. No. We're on the sides of innocent civilians.
Yes.
But when it comes to organisations that run various different territory, we're on Israel's side.
Yeah.
Because Israel is the only civilised... between Israel and Hamas, Israel's the civilised democratic government, Hamas are the terrorists. It's not complicated. I love the fact, by the way, in the last few hours, Israel... this is brilliant. Israel's defence minister, Israel Katz... it wasn't. No, it was him that said this. He's basically said that countries like Spain, Ireland, Norway and others who levelled accusations of genocide and stuff at Israel about Gaza are legally obligated to allow any Gaza resident that they are now allowed to leave the Gaza Strip to enter their territories. They should take them as refugees. I mean... What
a fantastic policy. And we'll fly them there for free.
Put your money where your mouth is. Put your money where your mouth is. Again, this is right. Egypt and Jordan don't want them either. I wonder why. Let's talk about Grenfell Tower. I have to say, I mean, an awful lot of the news organisations this morning are absolutely obsessed with the story. Now, the Grenfell Tower disaster was absolutely horrific. We were on air that morning. You could see what had gone wrong. I mean, it was obvious what had gone wrong very, very early on. 72 people died. It's almost 8 years ago now, this horrific fire. The tower still stands in West London. It's an absolute eyesore. It's horrific. We don't know whether it's unstable or not. One assumes not, otherwise it would already have been removed. But Angela Rayner, the Deputy Prime Minister, was Housing Secretary. She met with bereaved families and survivors last night and told them that they are going to now demolish the tower block. Now, it turns out that the majority of those who were at this meeting don't want it demolished. They feel that either they want it as a memorial. Or they don't want it demolished until there are charges brought and people are actually convicted. I'm going to be honest about this. I think this is utter tosh. Grenfell Tower needs to be demolished. One, because we do not leave a burnt-out tower on prime land, which is needed for housing for other people who are in desperate need of housing, left forever as a memory of this awful night. Two, we need to have prosecutions. We absolutely need to have prosecutions. I want people to go to jail for what they did that meant that tower was unsafe. And so many people involved in that knew it was unsafe and they did not care. I want people to go to prison. Three, I want every single person who's living in another tower block like that, whether private or social housing or whatever, a hospital or school, to have that cladding removed and to be made safe. That should be the priority, not the feelings of bereaved families. Now, I'm sorry to sound harsh, but if I had a family member die in a car crash in the street, I wouldn't expect that car to remain in the street, blocking the street for the end of time. That's absurd. No one would expect that. What happened was awful. We need to have people need to go to court, people need to go to prison for what they did that caused those deaths. And we need to have a memorial, obviously, to those deaths. But more importantly, we need to look after the living now rather than worrying about that. And I'm sorry to sound harsh, but it seems to me Grenfell Tower should have been taken down 6 years ago, let alone this year. And I'm really, really fed up of everything in this country happening because of someone's feelings as opposed to reality of the need to actually take action rather than emote. The family's gone through absolute horror. The ones who were in there and survived, those who lost loved ones, it's awful. Leaving that tower up does not change that one iota.
The building shell does not affect any prosecutions, and I agree with you completely in everything that you said. I think the best memorial there could be for those that lost their lives and their families would be to have other happy families living in safe accommodation in the area, and possibly at the centre of it a memorial garden, so that it is always remembered in a way, but with happiness.
Absolutely, that's exactly what I think as well. Just finally, I do want to get very quickly to Donald Trump unveiling plans to ban trans athletes from competing in the Olympics in the wrong category. Now, this is always going to be hailed by those who sort of go on there, oh, this is fascism in action, this is transphobia in action, you hate trans people. No, it's nonsense. It's simply trans people can compete in the Olympics as they can in any other sport, in a park run, at school, at college, whatever they want. But they need to compete in the right sex category. Yes. And if you're a man, not born a man, it's the same thing. If you're a man, you don't get to compete against women. So that average athletes who are male don't get to beat top successful women who should be winning those prizes. I mean, I'm all in favour of this. Absolutely. This is another one of Trump's executive orders that I can just go,
yeah.
Brilliant.
The professional sports body should be doing this. It shouldn't have to come down to political...
Should never have been allowed to happen in the first place.
Well, exactly. And the biological difference is very clear. There's a big debate in football at the moment about women suffering more ACL injuries, and that's because of biology. Yep.
It's almost like we're born different. It's almost like we all knew that, which is why we had separate sports for women.
Well, that's why women can have children and men can't.
Yeah. That was very transphobic of you.
I know, it's terrible.
I mean, sorry, can someone call them? That was easily a non-crime hate incident.
I'll report myself to HR.
Okay.
I'm not an employee. So.
no, I'm going straight to the police. I'd love to hear your thoughts on all of that as well. Give us a call, 0344 499 1000. Love to hear your thoughts on Grenfell Tower, on the trans athletes cheating in the wrong sex category at the Olympics, but also crucially on Tory leader Kemi Badenoch pledging to ban migrants who claim benefits from ever becoming British citizens or being allowed to settle here permanently. Seems pretty obvious to me. Why was it not already the law? This is Talk, the home of common sense.
Not forget, 2 days ago we were told the police weren't investigating the situation because nobody had complained about it, right? So the police didn't tell us then, which they should have done if this was not cooked up in the last 24 hours. Yeah. Why didn't they say 2 days ago, well, we won't be investigating it because it's happened more than 3 years after the event, and so therefore the law no longer applies? It didn't say that then. No. Guess why? Because there wasn't a law that applied. Because surely that's what they should have said. And then nobody would have complained, and that would have been the end of it.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very, very good morning to you. 10:26 is the time. This is Talk, the home of common sense. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. Philip Ingram is still here in the corner. We'll get his thoughts on what our next couple of callers have to say. You're getting in touch about Kemi Badenoch's announcement on migration. Should she become Prime Minister of this country? I mean, it won't be for a good few years. First policy announcement from her, rather sooner than the 2 years she told us we had to wait. She's pledging to ban migrants who claim benefits from ever becoming British citizens or getting the right to settle here permanently. Also having to wait an extra 5 years, so now 10 years to get indefinite leave to remain, and then another 5 years to claim British citizenship. I think a lot of us are wondering, how is it that people have been allowed to basically claim the right to live here permanently after just 5 years without proof that they're a net contributor? You might wonder, oh, maybe that's one of the reasons we've got the economic problems we've got right now, eh? Well, let's talk about this with you. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. Daniel's on the line. He's in Epsom. Hello, Daniel.
Morning, Julia. Morning, Philip.
Morning.
Morning, Daniel.
What do you want to say?
Well, what I want to say is I don't think the majority of the public in Britain can't trust what Kemi Badenoch says.
Why not?
The Conservative Party absolutely let us down on immigration. We gave them instructions over a 20-year period to stop illegal immigration and get legal immigration under control, and they ignored all of us.
Yeah, they told us explicitly they would get immigration. I mean, do we all remember those wonderful, simpler, happier times when we talked about net migration in the tens of thousands?
I mean, the thing is, Julia, this is like a 25, 30-year-old problem that's been ignored. Meanwhile, I mean, and what I love the most, the irony is that the Conservative Labour Uniparty is over. It's finished, and they don't know it yet. They're carrying on in Parliament, but they don't realise when the majority of us get the opportunity, we're going to give them a right good kick up the you-know-whats, and we're all going to vote reform. Everyone I know, everyone I work with, we're all going to vote reform.
I know a huge number of people who are planning that. Here's the thing. They're at where they are at the polls, 25% in the polls. It may well go higher. We know in a first-past-the-post system. We know even, actually, in the system, the PL system in Europe, most of those countries, actually, the two main parties have often been able, even if they massively disagree on policies, left and the right, they will, SDB and CDU in Germany, they will work together to keep out another party that is kind of the disruptor party. How long that will last, whether it's another election or two, we don't know. But the fundamental thing is here, do you trust that, you're saying you vote reform, do you trust that Nigel Farage would do the stuff he said he'd do, even though the Tories said stuff they'd do and then they didn't do it? What is different about him?
I'll tell you what's different, because I think I look at the Conservative Party, and most of them are Lib Dems in blue ties. Labour are even worse, right? When Nigel speaks, he speaks from the heart, and I believe he's going to do. I think we need bold, brave, tough government. We all know on the ground that mass immigration is destroying the fabric of Britain.
Yes.
I see it every day. I can see the decline and the degradation. We need someone to do something now, or 25 years ago, in perfect honesty.
Yeah.
Mass immigration is ruining Britain. I think the only person and the only people that you can rely on to do something about it is reform.
And is that because they've been saying, in his various different guises and different parties, Nigel Farage and others, they'd been saying this stuff for a long time when everyone shouted bigot and racist and xenophobe at them, and at me, and probably at you as well if you mentioned the same thing. Whereas do you think it's political expediency that the Tories are saying this now?
Well, what I think it is the left in general aren't learning the lessons from the American election, OK?
No.
If you call everyone far right and everyone's a fascist and everyone's a racist, if you say it long enough, the meaning disappears and you end up losing. And that's what's going to happen here. We might be going to hell in a handcart over the next 3.5, 4 years under this Labour government, but eventually we will get... They might try and stifle the elections, but eventually we'll get our say, and they're going to get a massive kick in, Julia, and I can't wait.
It's going to be very interesting. Daniel, thank you very much indeed. Great call. Let's go to Joe, who is in Essex. Hello, Joe.
Hi, Julia. How are you?
I'm very well indeed. Thank you for calling. What do you want to say?
There's two things. People keep mentioning that this is it's a changed the Tory party, but it isn't. It's the same Tory party. You've got Lee Rowley as the chief of staff, who was part of the previous government.
Yeah.
You've got Henry Newman, who is an advisor to Sunak, Johnson and Gove. You've got Dylan Sharp, who was an advisor to Sunak.
Yeah.
You've got Robert Rams and Victoria Housen and Daniel El-Gamri. They were all part of the last government. They are all part of her team.
Yeah.
So it's just the same.
And she's very close to Michael Gove as well, Kemi Badenoch.
Exactly. So it's this whole, it's new leadership. It's not. It's the same team around her. It's just a different...
Do you think there's nothing that she can do that would actually change things? Because clearly it's very interesting. We had Keir Starmer, the PM at PMQs yesterday, 2 mentions of reform. I mean, why would you bother mentioning the party? We've got the Tories rushing to a policy, having said Kemi said they'd wait 2 years before they had policy. Do you think they are all running scared? Yeah, I do. And there's a massive flaw in this policy. If it was retroactive, I'd support this policy. But the people who came in under the Boris wave are eligible to start their pathway to citizenship in 2027. Yeah, well, I think they're talking about making it, backdating it to 2021. But again, it's not going to happen, is it? I mean, it's just not going to happen. Yeah. And my biggest thing is, why are migrants getting benefits? It's not a case of, we will stop them getting citizenship. No, Kemi, stop them taking benefits. Well, no, it's not stop them taking benefits. If you need to rely on benefits and you're here, then we'd like you to leave. And if you don't leave within, a month or 2 or whatever reasonable time frame, then we will force you. But we don't even have a record of who's here. We have no idea who is in this country and who's not. And that is such a basic flaw. Joe, really appreciate that call. Thank you very much indeed. Quick word from Philip Ingram.
There's a common problem we're missing, and that's the civil service that are here. Because no matter who's in government, it's the same civil service and the same woke approaches to things. So the thing that stopped the Tories for 14 years were woke government lawyers saying, you have to test this in the courts, you have to do that, you have to do the other. They could have done that. They didn't push through. But you need some. The way is so. The method of doing it is so hard, but you need the will to do it as well, don't you? 10:33 is the time. Up next, we're going to talk about this and plenty of other topics with the brilliant Brendan O'Neill from Spiked Online. Stay tuned. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense with me, Julia Hartley-Brewer, and thank you very much indeed for joining me. Let's go straight to my next guest, Brendan O'Neill, Chief Political Writer at Spiked Online. A very good morning to you, Brendan.
Hi, Julia. How are you doing?
Very well indeed. Thanks for joining us. Let's talk first of all about Kemi Badenoch. We've just been talking about it. Our audience knows what we're on about. This pledge to ban migrants from claiming benefits, from being able to get indefinite leave to remain, to become British citizens, makes him, doubling the amount of time you have to wait before you can even apply for indefinite leave to remain and then become a British citizen. I'm wondering, were you as surprised as I was? I mean, I've covered these stories as a political journalist over the years, but having it spelt out, just how darn easy and quick it is for someone to get the right to live here forever and to become a citizen?
Yeah, I was actually, and it's a nice reminder of just how much the immigration debate has changed over the past few years. 15 or 20 years ago, it would not have been controversial to say that if you come to this country, you should work. You should be a productive member of society.
Oh, you and your crazy talk, Brendan.
Right, it's even even saying that now feels refreshing and liberating, even though it's something that we all would have said just a few years back. My parents are immigrants. They came to this country in 1970 and they came here to work. Why on earth would they come here if it was not to get work and be productive and be useful? And if they hadn't found work, they would have gone back to where they came from. That's how immigration used to operate. Yeah. But somehow over the past few years, we've got this idea that everyone has the right to go anywhere they want, and if anyone questions that, they're racist and far right. Yeah. I would love to move to sunny Italy and sit around and get paid by their government to do nothing, but I realise that's not an option.
Oh, well, you shouldn't have voted for Brexit then. I can hear people shouting at the screen. Yeah. But this is it. I mean, it is just bizarre, I think, to most people. But particularly, there is a sort of English language test for British citizenship, and there is a sort of very complicated test about our value, our culture, and some of our history, which frankly I don't think most of us could pass either, even having lived here all our lives. But the thing is, it just seems to me that it's definitely not working, because we clearly have people who are in this country who have the right to live here forever, who are not living as if they were living in Britain. They're living as if they were still in Lahore or anywhere else. And I'm sorry, that doesn't work for me, and it doesn't work for the majority of the British people. And you can shout racist, bigot, xenophobe at me and everyone else as much as you want. That's not the deal. That's not what we expect. We expect people to come here to work, to integrate, learn the language. We can be friends. We can chat at the school gate, chat in the workplace, socialise, and be part of British life. And I think British people have been very welcoming and open to that over the years. But when large groups of people, and we are talking about people arriving in their hundreds and hundreds of thousands from some countries every year, don't integrate, don't assimilate, don't have, many of them, any basic language skills to be able to do that, there's a problem.
There's a real serious problem. And, we've got the worst of both worlds, because citizenship has been reduced to this kind of piece of paper. And it's like an SAT test. You have to jump through certain hoops and answer certain questions, make sure you revise really hard for the citizenship test, and then suddenly you're a citizen of the country. Yeah. Actually, citizenship means more than that. It means a sense of connection, a sense of belonging, a desire to be part of the country, a desire to mix in with the people of this country and the values of this country. I think it's even worse than some of your guests have been saying, and they were some brilliant callers you had there, because what's happening now is that new arrivals are being actively discouraged from integrating. Yeah. Every signal they get from the political establishment, from the mainstream media, from popular culture, all of them say, this is a racist country, this is an Islamophobic country, our history is shameful, we're all a bunch of horrible people descended from empire, descended from colonialism. The message they always get is, why would you want to integrate into this country? Yeah. So we need massive cultural shift, as well as tighter rules around who comes here and how long it takes to become a citizen.
Absolutely. But as one of our callers pointed out, we've got the same civil service. And again, also so many in the political class, they're not proud of being British or being, a large number of them were English, not proud of that. You're allowed to be a proud Scot, a proud Welshman, not a proud English person, because that would make you racist, obviously. And Emily Thornbury would sneer at you for flying your national flag. And a lot of these people, they're having their Twitter bios, their EU flag, and they're citizens of nowhere. No, I hate to say, you're a British citizen, and you should be proud of that, because that is an amazing thing to be. And it's amazing how many millions of people do want to actually come to our shores because of that. But we should be more proud of it. I think most of us are, which is what's so tragic, is that people in charge don't. How much of this is political, though? Because there's no doubt at all Reform are beating on the door of the Tory votes, not only stealing a lot of their votes, taking. They're entitled to take the votes of Tory voters back in July last year. But also, even the latest poll suggests that a quarter of those who voted Tory last year now said they would vote Reform. They're above not just the Tories by a few points in the latest YouGov poll, they're even above Labour. So how much do you think this is the Tories running scared and going, we're going to have some policies on this, we're going to have to talk tough on this issue? And how much of it is it, do you think, genuine belief from Kemi Badenoch and her team that this is something that needs to be done?
Well, that's the thing that it's quite hard to work out. I think it's probably very genuine from Kemi Badenoch and her team. These are sensible people. I think they are committed to the idea of Britain as a good, positive country, and that if you come here, you should want to come here, you should want to integrate. I think they really believe that. But as we know, the Tory party is, they say it's a broad church. Actually, it's a divided church. There are lots of Tory wets. There are lots of Ramona Tories. There are lots of Tories who think open borders is a great idea. Yeah. So whether the party is behind her is a different question entirely. But, when I listened to Kemi Badenoch recently, I think she's saying some interesting things. And some of it, I think, is influenced by reform. I think some of it's probably influenced by the Social Democratic Party as well. When she talks about this country not being a hotel, not being a supermarket, you can't just come here, do some shopping, live for a while and then go away or whatever. Yeah. She is influenced by the ideas of some of those parties. That's a good thing, because I think if we fortify the borders of this country, generate some sense of patriotism and pride in our history, then we can really turn things around. So I hope she's serious in what she's saying.
Absolutely. I mean, one of the things I think we definitely want turned around is a lot of the mad wokery that we've seen in recent years. You fought a valiant battle on this front. And I want to come to some of the things Donald Trump is doing. But a lot of this is that actually people aren't even aware of what diversity, equity and inclusion actually means, what its real aims are. And again, it's this incredibly divisive, racist, I would say racist, homophobic, sexist and Marxist policy. And I think people really do not get to grips with what the theory is behind these policies, but also the huge amount of money that's being wasted on this. Staggering amounts of cash are being wasted by the police on diversity staff. £1.4 million spent on diversity staff by just one police force. West Yorkshire Police. They employ 19 DEI staff members. They also spent £361,000 of public money training them. I don't know what they were training them in. I mean, how to wear your rainbow lanyard. I've no idea. How to eat avocado on toast in the correct way. I need to drink a chai latte. I don't know. But there's huge amounts of money being spent on this. We also know we've still got this issue in the NHS where apparently, you have pregnant people and men who believe they're women may indeed have a cervix and need a cervical smear. I mean, absolute mad stuff. But these work diversity jobs being advertised, I kid you not, some of them, £123,000 a year. That's not far off what a cabinet minister earns. Now, we're told there's going to be a crackdown on this. I like to think that Wes Streeting is pretty sane on this stuff, but this is the sort of stuff that Donald Trump decided to deal with day one. Yeah.
We are so far behind America right now. And, the whole DEI thing, especially in police forces, especially in the NHS, it is financially wasteful. It is ideologically insane, and it is socially divisive. This is an incredibly divisive policy that treats people according to their racial characteristics rather than their color, which demeans women by allowing men to enter into women-only areas, including changing rooms, and which is homophobic in the way that it treats gay people and lesbians by also allowing the opposite sex to mingle with them when they don't want that to happen. Yeah. So for all those various reasons, DEI actually turns the clock back on the civil rights movement. It turns the clock back on feminism, and it makes things worse for those sections of society. Look at Trump. What Trump is doing, he has dismantled DEI. I thought those scenes yesterday where Trump signed that executive order about getting men out of girls' and women's sports was extraordinary. And those scenes of young girls, the future sports stars of the United States, standing around, applauding, looking really emotional, those were extraordinary scenes.
But
really
they shouldn't be. Imagine 20 years ago explaining to somebody that the President of the United States would have to have an executive order banning men from women's sports, and thinking, people would have said, well, why were men competing in women's sports? Oh, well, they said they were women. Yeah, but they're men. So why do you? It would take like an hour to explain it to someone.
It was completely insane, and we should really openly say how insane it was and how destructive it was for women's and girls' rights. And if you read the executive order, I read it yesterday, it is one of the clearest, finest, most rational government documents I have ever read. It really is admirable. And of course, loads of credit goes to the gender-critical women and activists, people like our own Sharon Davies here in the UK.
And who's on the show later, I'm delighted to say.
Right, and Riley Gaines in the US. Yeah. These heroic women who've been making this case for so long, and they've been called bigots, they've been called transphobes, they've been called the scum of the earth, and yet they persevered. So Trump has done those women right, and he has done society right, and it is about time Britain caught up.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I was absolutely thrilled about this. And again, the fact that the last Olympics we were watching a man, okay, not a trans man, but a man who clearly was born, with the chromosomes of a man. And, if his skeleton was dug up, they go, oh, this is a man. Punching a woman repeatedly in the face, and we called that sport. 2 men in boxing won women's Olympic medals. Never again must we see that. And Donald Trump, of course, America and LA are hosting the next Olympics, made it really clear, trans athletes are not going to be able to compete, who are men in women's sport. But it's amazing, you see we've already had marches, and you get the likes of the Cynthia Nixons, the Ginge of Sex and the City, who says, her son, actually she's got a daughter, her son, their best friend, her friend's child, they're all trans. I'm not something in the water in their street, because they've all been born in the wrong body. I would get that looked at by the sanitation department, wouldn't you? But just extraordinary that they people like that, they're accusing Donald Trump of being a fascist. This is outrageous behaviour. You think, this is so basic. This is simply about honesty, biological truth. No one is banning trans people from working in any job. No one's banning them from competing in sport. You just have to compete in the sport or do the job as what you actually are, which is a man or a woman. If you want to believe that you're a woman and call yourself whatever you want, that's fine. But if you're a man, you have to compete against other men. Why would anyone have a problem with that?
With one stroke of his pen, Donald Trump has done more for women and girls in America than any of those Hollywood faux feminists have ever done. He has restored their rights, not only their right to take part in sports without some big 15-year-old lad pushing them around, but also their right to their own changing rooms, their right to their own privacy. Young girls don't want to share a changing room with young men. This is not
I'm an old woman, and I don't want to. and I'm telling you right now, and I wouldn't share a changing room with a man in those circumstances. It's just bizarre. Bren, well, you've been on the right side of all of these arguments throughout. You've had all the name calling as well, but guess what? Turns out we were right all along. Who knew that? Yeah. Calling out facts makes you right. Brendan O'Neill, pleasure to have your company, chief political writer at Spiked Online. Quick word from Philip Ingram, listening to all of that, who's joining me in the studio today.
Well, it's more than calling out facts. If you start to add some of the figures together, West Yorkshire Police, 1.4 million, take that as an average across, all of the 45 police forces.
Spending on DI staff.
Expending DI staff across the whole country. That's 45 million across the board. Expand that to NHS trusts, 215 NHS trusts. They're going to be more than that, but call it 1.4. That's another 300 million.
I believe the figure in the NHS is 40 million. But again, huge.
But it's likely more. I know the Minister of Defence, their head of DE&I is a civil servant, 2-star equivalent, who's on a salary of over £100,000 a year, plus final salary pension, plus lots of staff.
Yeah. We don't allow for all the other costs of it. But also how much those people stop everyone else from getting their jobs done because of the constant training and the nonsense.
It's ridiculous, and it's costing you and I as taxpayers money to do stuff that's just common sense.
Any political party that literally came in and said, that ends similar to Trump style, 100%. You got my vote. 10:49 is the time. Up next, we're going to be talking about where we are with energy policy. Hello, Ed Miliband, where are you? Labour ministers want to slash the red tape, take on the NIMBYs when it comes to the blocking of nuclear power stations. Wow, every now and then Labour gets something right. We'll talk about that with Harry Wilkinson at the Global Warming Policy Foundation. Up next, this is Talk.
It is dreadful, but actually the first thing we should say is that this person must be the worst voice coach in the world, because I think his voice might have actually got worse under her tuition. Who knows? Maybe they were practicing behind masks in order to maintain the rules and regulations. I'm not sure, but it does seem rather convenient, doesn't it? Yeah. That when free gear Keir gets caught out, and he has been caught out royally, it's amazing it's taken so long.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense, with me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. Philip Ingram is still with me as well, former senior military intelligence officer. Let's talk right now about, every now and then Labour do something that I actually agree with, and I always say if I agree with, I'm not party political, I just want sensible policies. I know it'll never happen, but it's worth a try. But on planning, building airports and building some power stations, I'm fully in agreement with taking on the NIMBYs. Let's talk about this with Harry Wilkinson. He's head of policy at the Global Warming Policy Foundation. Very good morning to you.
Good morning.
Thanks for joining us. Well, ministers were told are going to slash red tape, take on the blockers to build nuclear reactors across Britain. More nuclear plants going to be built across the country, creating, we're told, all these thousands of highly skilled jobs that all these energy policies are supposed to bring in. They're looking at these sort of small nuclear reactors being able to be built. And it is astonishing that the last nuclear power station built in this country was in 1995. I mean, this is madness, particularly given that for the last, goodness knows how many years, both the Tory government and now the Labour government have been committed to a clean energy policy by 2030 for electricity, which they're not going to achieve with solar and wind. We know that, and would actually need nuclear power stations. So would you actually, probably against all better judgment, actually support this Labour Party policy?
Well, it's so rare, but it is quite a nice experience to actually be able to welcome something the government's doing. It's not so surprising, perhaps, that this was announced by the Prime Minister, not by Ed Miliband, who you would think would be wanting to be right at the front of this. The Greens historically have been at the heart of opposing nuclear across Europe. You look at Germany, you look at Belgium, for example. We're finally seeing a renaissance of nuclear. This is very welcome because nuclear, it can deliver that kind of industrial energy that you need for steel, ceramics, your energy-intensive manufacturing industries, and it can also keep the lights on 24/7. Unlike renewables, of course, which don't provide that industrial energy, and of course they work whenever they feel like working. They don't actually provide that level of reliability that you need.
Absolutely, and particularly we know in winter when often the sun doesn't shine and the wind doesn't blow, then what do we do? And also nuclear energy is very clean. It's very, as you say, very secure, very reliable, and very, very safe as well. A lot of people still sort of think about, Chernobyl or the disaster in the Japanese after the tsunami. But actually, nuclear power is incredibly safe now. But we haven't been building nuclear power plants, even though actually the existing ones we've got have been tempted to make them bigger, some of them. But actually, they're going out of action over coming years. So if we are going to hit any of the targets which Labour still laughingly thinks they're going to hit, which brackets they're not going to hit, we will need these nuclear reactors. But how quickly can they be built? Because this idea that these small nuclear reactors, these ones are, they're kind of sort of like almost like IKEA style, take them out of a kit, and you can actually build them very quickly. Is that realistic? And when they say quickly, what do they mean?
Well, these kind of things have been around. They've been in nuclear submarines. They've been in certain universities. They've actually had small modular nuclear reactors powering some of their activities. So this is something we know can be done. The question is all about regulation. It's all about how quickly the government can get out of the way to make this work. So the technology is there, but we've been talking about small modular reactors for some time. I remember, many times under the last Parliament talking about this, being optimistic about it, but then just not seeing the results on the ground.
We never actually get them.
No doubt, net zero policies are economic suicide. So they need to get a move on in shifting this. We see the chemicals industry is down by 38% just since 2021. We see our steel industry almost entirely closed. We're seeing the deindustrialization of Britain happening at breakneck speed.
Yeah.
There's going to be nothing left to protect if the government doesn't get a move on.
But Harry, will bring us closer to meeting our carbon targets. So that's a good thing, right?
Well, I think Ed Miliband is the only person in the country who hasn't got the memo that actually the cost of energy is absolutely vital to our economic strength here in the UK. Why won't somebody tell him this?
I know. Well, again, I mean, when people sort of keep blaming Ed Miliband for this, so hey, the man who appointed him is fully signed up to this madness as well, and ultimately it's Keir Starmer who's responsible. I mean, I really do hope we build nuclear power stations. They are reliable. They are relatively cheap, and they're very, very clean. And what amazes me is how many people claim to be green are opposed to nuclear energy as well. But the crazy thing that we've done over the years, when we do build a nuclear power station, we build on some brand new design, which takes extra long time, as opposed to those ones that have been built over in France. They've got loads of them. They work really well. Why don't we just bring over their technology and do that there? But of course, we've lost all the skilled men and women who can build these nuclear power plants because we haven't built one for so long. Oh, it's almost like no one's got joined up thinking, eh? Harry Wilkinson, always good to talk to you, Head of Policy at the Global Warming Policy Foundation. Philip Ingram, I mean, nuclear is part of the answer, but a lot of people on the woke side, the climate hysteria side, don't think it is.
It's a huge part of the answer, and these are the small modular reactors. It's the same reactors that are used in submarines and surface warships and all the rest of it. They're about a third, maximum capacity, about a third the size of the big reactors, but that's why there's just been £9 billion invested in Rolls-Royce, who specialise in these. Yeah. They can be manufactured much quicker, much more cheaply, and put out to power several times.
They can be, but will they be? I think that's the question a lot of people are wondering, the ability to actually get anything done. There'll be legal challenges, the usual. Anyway, I'm sure we'll talk about this many more times. But Ed Miliband, lovely to get you on the show one day if you ever come out of the hole you're hiding in because you think that we're all going to die from climate change. I don't know. Anyway, lots more coming up. News up next. We'll be back in a mo. This is Talk, the home of common sense.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
A very, very good morning to you. Welcome back to the show. This is Talk, the home of common sense with me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. Just coming up to 3 minutes past 11 o'clock. And whether you're listening on DAB+ radio or on your smart speaker, watching on YouTube or on your connected device, it is lovely to have your company on a beautiful, sunny in London, a beautiful sunny day, although jolly cold. Hope you've got some sunshine for you, but don't worry, it'll rain tomorrow. I'm sure it will. Lots to talk about in this show. Good news, I think, but again, will it rain tomorrow? Migrants who claim benefits will be banned from ever becoming British citizens under Conservative leader Kemi Badenoch's plans to tackle immigration. Of course, she actually has to, get elected as Prime Minister and then actually do it. And that is quite a long time away. But also, why are migrants able to claim benefits at all anyway in the first place? She also wants to basically raise the amount of time you have to be in the country before you can claim indefinite right to leave to remain and to claim British citizenship or even apply for it. But why has it been so easy all these years in the first place? I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. Give us a call. 0344 499 1000 is the number to ring. You can text on 87222. Get in touch on X at Talk TV. Calls are charged at the national rate. Text costs one standard network rate message. Got lots more to say about that. Also going to be talking more about just the extraordinary waste going on in all of our public services, but we certainly know in the police. Oh, we haven't got any police to come to you when you've had your phone snatched. Or we haven't got any police to actually investigate your case even if we give you evidence. Haven't got any police at all. But, don't worry, we're going to hire a load more diversity, equity and inclusion staff and then spend hundreds of thousands training them. I kid you not, West Yorkshire Police, just one police force has spent £1.4 million on employing DEI staff. So people just basically is employed to just basically stop other people from getting their job done. But haven't got enough bobbies on the beat. What is going on? Plus, Scotland Yard have said that Keir Starmer won't face police action over claims of a real breach when he met with his voice coach during lockdown restrictions. Now, they're basically, I think, lots of people talking about sort of a 3-year statute of limitations. And as Mike Graham was saying on his show, we can all fess up to any rule breaks that we did. Just seems that no one's bothered anymore. But people were getting £10,000 fines for breaching rules back during those days. Is it really over? Also, we're going to be talking more about Donald Trump's Gaza plan. Donald Trump insists that everybody loves his plan, despite criticism from some of America's closest allies. This comes after the US president said he would take over Gaza. He would resettle Palestinians elsewhere while the strip is transformed into the Riviera of the Middle East. He very clearly and repeatedly used the word permanently remove, even forcibly remove Gaza residents. But that has been toned down since by other members of the Secretary of State and Marco Rubio, and also his spokeswoman as well at a White House press briefing. There's an urgent question that has been still underway actually in the House of Commons on the situation in Israel and Gaza. It was tabled by Labour MP Andy MacDonald. Foreign Office Minister Annalise Dodds is replying because, of course, the Foreign Secretary David Lammy is in Ukraine, as we pointed out yesterday, as if the people of Ukraine hadn't suffered enough. And she has said that the UK is clear that we must see a negotiated two-state solution with a sovereign Palestinian state, which includes the West Bank and Gaza, alongside a safe and secure Israel, with Jerusalem as the shared capital. She's also said we would oppose any effort to move Palestinians in Gaza to neighbouring Arab states against their will. There must be no forced displacement of Palestinians nor any reduction in territory of the Gaza Strip. So we'll see and debate all of that later on. I'd love to hear your thoughts on all the stories we're talking about, as I say, particularly Kemi Badenoch and what she's had to say about taking on some of the issues on migration. Philip Ingram, MBE, is a former senior military intelligence officer. He is joining us for the whole show today. Delighted to have you here in the studio. First of all, before we get into policy, what do you think the reason is why Kemi Badenoch has suddenly announced a policy that is a policy pledge if she were a Prime Minister, when she said that only a few months ago we're not going to have any policy announcements for at least 2 years? She's
been forced to react by the disruptive activities of reform in the same way that Keir Starmer is talking about reform in Parliament. He sees how disruptive they are and what a threat they are to both parties. And that's why both major parties are You're creating policies as Kemi is doing, even though she said she wasn't going to for 2 years. Keir Starmer is talking about them because he is trying to manipulate them to undermine the Tory vote. But the Tory vote's 4 years away. So he's clearly concerned about their rise in the polls.
It is fascinating. And again, I thought, the jeering and the shouting at Nigel Farage when he asked a question, again, it's unbecoming. You don't have... I feel the same way about people jeering and shouting at someone, who, and I agree with Nigel Farage a lot of things, but, it's just not, it's not how you behave. And again, I do think people don't understand just quite how badly that goes down with voters. And I remember, when there were some questions, being asked about, about the grooming gangs and Axel Karma and cases like that, and the tutting and the booing, even of Chris Philp, the Tory Shadow Minister, just, by Labour MPs, they just do not realise. It might go down very well with your little friends, but not with voters, and not even many of your own voters. Let's go into the substance of what Kemi Badenoch says, though. She wants migrants who claim benefits to be banned from settling in Britain, either under indefinite leave to remain or being able to claim citizenship. Currently, after 5 years, you can, if you've come here legally, you can claim indefinite leave to remain, and after that, you can then apply for British citizenship years later. But she says basically you should have to wait 10 years before you're allowed to apply for that, and then another 5 years for British citizenship. I just think most people are just absolutely befuddled that it's so easy currently to get British citizenship.
And the current rules are ones that, Kemi Badenoch was part of government for 14 years that set the current rules that the current government is now running on with. I think she's missing an opportunity. She's trying to tweak around the edges with times and other bits and pieces. She should propose a radical change and a points-based system where a big chunk of those points come from value added to society, and that's based on language, your contribution to the culture, and your financial contribution to society. If people come in and want to live in this country and be part of society and be British and promote British values and live British values, fantastic, brilliant, stay.
Come on in.
But if you're coming in to just take, and then to complain about everything,
to bring your home life complete. I mean, I'm not saying you have to have roast beef, every single evening for dinner. We're not talking about nonsense like that. Not Little England. I mean, by the way, I make a very, very nice Thai buffet, I'd like to say. But I'm just saying, I don't...
Oh, you bring your Thai...
Stonkingly good Thai chef. No, but I'm not suggesting that. But it's about the important stuff. It's about, integrating. And again, I'd say things like, if you want to come and live in this country, I don't think you should be wearing a burqa or stuff like that, and setting yourself apart from people and reaching the norms of our society. If you don't think your wife should speak English... because you want her to leave the house,
then she shouldn't be here.
Well, neither should you, though. Sorry, and if you think that someone's not allowed to draw a cartoon of your prophet, even though they're not a Muslim themselves, or can't leave your religion, or the reality is, and again, these are the things people don't like to say. There are different cultures, there are different people from different national heritages who have settled very differently in this country. Some who have made their life here, settled here, really integrated, and become part of people's communities, and others that have not. And then everyone gets a bit squeamish. And, I don't know if, and again, it's not even just like some religions, because actually there are people who come from certain countries with certain religions who do integrate well, who do, and people are so squeamish about it, but that's where you need to actually, talk actual proper facts and be open and all about it. Here's the thing, we're at least having this conversation. We've got, a front bench politician who has, a chance of becoming Prime Minister, not a backbencher, pushing for this. But this is stuff that they have been pushed into. This is the same thing we've got with what's going on in the rest of Europe as well, is that... And again, in America, the Republicans, you can talk a good game on tackling the border and tackling wokery and all of these things, and crime. But if you don't actually do anything of the things you say you're going to do, voters aren't going to trust you anymore. And that's why you see parties, voters in Europe turning to some of these parties like the AfD and others. That's why you see voters in America turning to Donald Trump. And that's why you see voters in Britain turning to Reform, because they believe that these politicians, simply say what they think what we want to hear, but they have no intention of actually doing it.
There's a new kid in the block in global politics, and that new kid in the block is the disruptor. And the disruptor in the United States is Donald Trump. The disruptor in Germany is AfD. The disruptor in France is Marine Le Pen. And the disruptor in the UK is Reform. And people need to sit up and wake up to the fact that this is, the world order is changing.
Are they just going to disrupt?
No,
or are they going to change things? Because I just think it's really clear. Voters now are just like, no, we're done. Yeah. We're done. You've shouted bigot and racist at us for too long. We don't care anymore. Those words just bounce off us. We know they're meaningless now, and we want something done. The reality is there. The streets do not feel safe. We can see the difference. We can see these parallel communities. We can see the difference. Yeah. We can see the economy is in doldrums. You can get away, if you're a government in a Western nation, you can get away with doing an awful lot of the stuff that voters don't want, as long as voters have got a pound in their pocket and life is going well. When they are struggling to do the weekly shop, when they're struggling to put food in the car or to heat their homes, and they see money being taken away from them, like their elderly mother or father with their things like their winter fuel allowance, when they're worried about their job or getting a pay rise to cover bills because of the national insurance hike, you know what? Then people change their minds and they say, do you know what? And it's not about all blaming foreigners. Not at all. I don't blame a single person who's come to this country. I blame the politicians who've allowed it to happen. They're the people to blame. Yeah,
I call them disruptors, not because they are going out to disrupt and that's all they do. It's because they are disrupting the way things have always been done. And unless our main political parties sit and wake up and start to recognise that actually the situation's changed and they need to be progressive rather than change what has gone on beforehand and tweak around the edges. And this is what we're seeing from both parties.
You can't just pay lip service to us anymore. We're done now. Absolutely, we're done now. I mean, it is just mind-blowing, isn't it? Look, I do want your calls on this. We've got a little bit of a technical problem with I think it's called phone box. So we can't actually take your calls right now. We're going to get that fixed as soon as we can, but I've got a load of messages and I will get to those coming up. Let's just talk also briefly about Donald Trump. He says that everyone loves my Gaza plan. This is despite global condemnation. Well, I mean, look, the key thing is he did talk about forcibly, permanently removing the people of Gaza from, the Palestinians from Gaza, moving them to Egypt and Jordan. Egypt and Jordan said we don't want them. Not going to happen. Everyone else said, oh no, this would be ethnic cleansing. It's not allowed. Now it's been backtracked on a bit. Secretary of State Marco Rubio and his White House press secretary talking about a temporary removal. Do you still think this might actually happen, or is this, again, you just talked about him being his disruptor self? He is the Vogon leader disruptor, invading the earth. He's disruptor in chief. Anyone who takes what Donald Trump is saying at face value and tries to analyse that in the first 24 hours of his statement coming out is just wasting their time completely. That's the mistake. You let it soak, let the reality start to come out from his staff and all the rest of it, and then start to look at it. These weren't off-the-cuff remarks when he was sitting next to Benjamin Netanyahu. Well, he was at the podium. He believed they were on a piece of paper. He was reading something. It wasn't just a casual remark, but apparently a bit of a surprise to everybody. That said, everyone's a surprise to everybody. I've spoken to some people who've worked closely with the American administration before they came in, and this was definitely something they were talking about, and this is the reality. When people are saying, well, this is all pie in the sky, it couldn't possibly happen, neither is a two-state solution going to happen on terms that the Palestinian people and their leaders are going to agree to, or the Israelis are going to agree to. It's not going to happen. It's not an option. The Palestinian leadership doesn't believe in a two-state solution. Whatever they say, they don't believe in it. They believe in a one-state solution. They basically want the state of Israel. That's not going to happen. It's not going to happen under Trump's watch. Not going to happen under any American government's watch. So that's not going to happen. So that's just as pie in the sky. We need a realistic, end to this. There needs to be a realistic sit down and end to it. It was written down. I understand the speechwriter that wrote that speech for him is one of his colleagues who is a New York real estater by history, and therefore hence all the real estate analogies that came in. But it is a fair point. Gaza, its physical location, Gaza should be an amazing holiday destination. Everyone Palestinian Gaza could have a great job working in a booming tourist industry. Hamas were given the money to do that, and they didn't. They built tunnels and they built weapons and missiles, and that's the real difficulty. And you can't have a two-state solution where one element's the West Bank, the other's Gaza, and you've got no connection in between. People have to sit down and start to look at this from a reality perspective. Well, actually, again, as opposed to pretending to be all moralistic and right about it. And again, I think it's great the Israeli government calling out the likes of Ireland and Norway and others, saying, oh, and Spain, oh, you've criticised us, oh, we're genocidal, OK, well, you think these people should be allowed to leave. Fine. Do you want them? Yeah. You should take those refugees.
Yeah, very much so.
Go on then, take them.
US military will provide the aircraft to take them from Gaza and deposit them there.
Call them out.
Dublin, watch out.
Let's also talk about the Grenfell Tower. We touched on this a bit earlier. It's a difficult topic. Absolutely, almost 8 years ago, we woke up to the horrific scenes on our TVs of that fire in the Grenfell Tower. I knew the tower well. I used to live in West London. 72 people ended up dying in that horrific inferno who shouldn't have died because horrible, not even mistakes were made. Deliberate policies were put in place, deliberate building projects were put in place, which meant that fire was basically a match that was waiting to go up, which is also the case for thousands of other buildings in this country at that time, and some still now. Now, Angela Rayner, the Deputy Prime Minister and Housing Secretary, has announced that they are going to demolish, after all these years, the burnt-out Tower of Grenfell. And families and those who died and survivors from the Grenfell Tower back in 2017, many of them have reacted with horror, saying they weren't consulted. They do not want the tower to go. Some of them want it to remain as a permanent memorial. Some of them say it needs to stay until at least we have some criminal charges and we have some justice for those who died. I believe those people are wrong. I'm really sorry to say this. My heart goes out to people who were caught up in that fire, who lost loved ones, who lost their homes. It was a horrific ordeal. Here's the thing. There are priorities right now. One is to get justice for those people. We need to have criminal prosecutions. I absolutely want people to go to prison for what happened there that night and in the months and years leading up to it. We also need to make sure that every other building in this country that has similar flammable panels is made safe, and they still are not made safe. Surely the living need to be the priority now, not, sadly, the dead. But also, I don't think we should make policy ever based on the feelings of those who are grieving. That sounds harsh. That sounds cruel. But the reality is we need to build more housing for people who need housing in that area. We need to build safe, affordable housing for people in that part of London. We need to remove an eyesore to the horrific past, and we need to build on for the future. I do not believe that people, shedding crocodile tears and crossing their hands and saying how terrible it is, I don't think that really helps. I want the prosecutions. I want every home in this country to be safe. And I want this never to happen again. I want people to be accountable. But we also need to move on. And I really, really, really do say to the grieving families and to survivors that on this case, Angela Rayner is doing the right thing. The only thing wrong about demolishing the tower right now is that it should have actually been done 6 years ago, should have been done long ago. It is an eyesore as you approach London, driving through the West London. It is a memory and a testimonial to an horrific night. But we do not need to leave it there forever for posterity to mark the passing of those people. A much better tribute to those who died would be to make sure that no one else ever dies again in such an inferno caused by the malpractice, the malfeasance of those who were supposed to be making that tower safe and look very beautiful for those in the surroundings, which is what happened. Philip Ingram, there's no doubt at all that tower's got to go. It should have gone long ago.
It should have done, and it shouldn't be linked to prosecutions. And the prosecutions, it's 8 years. It's too long. They should have happened already.
The inquiry took too long, although the inquiry was very hard hitting. But remember, the families didn't even want the guy in charge of the Justice Morpick because he was white and posh. He wouldn't understand. They object to everything.
Yeah, well, exactly. And this is where I think the best memorial for those that have died would be for happy families to be back in the area again, and with memorial gardens at the centre of a new apartment complex.
The 9/11, the Twin Towers, they didn't just sort of leave rubble on the ground. I'm sorry, that's just not how things work. And a lot of the big complaints have been people not getting rehoused properly. It's because there's not enough housing. We need to build more housing. I just think there is a mawkish people with their hands go, this is awful, and yes, it is awful, but let's do something. Whether it's an awful fire like this, whether it's a terror attack, whether it's Axel Rudakabana type thing, I'm fed up with people lighting candles, singing Kumbaya. Do something about it, prevent the next one from happening, and look after the people who it's happened to.
Take positive action, leave a positive legacy. Stop going regressive and negative in everything that we do.
Ringing hands and lighting candles, I'm so sorry, it doesn't actually do anything. I'm sorry to sound harsh, but
fun at times.
Yeah, exactly. Let's talk about local elections. They're going to be postponed. It's been Angela Rayner basically she's in the news a lot these days, isn't she? Got a lot of power. They're going to reorganise various district and local and county councils, removing a layer of bureaucracy. Good. Should have been done years ago. But it's going to take a long while to do it. There are local elections in May. The people who are currently running those councils have been given the option of you can delay those elections for a while, I think mostly for about a year, because there's no point electing people who are basically only going to be in power for a year or be councillors for a year when it should be a 3 or 4 year term. Nigel Farage and Reform are furious about this. They say they could be doing really well in these elections. This is Tories and Labour in cahoots, basically, because it's largely Tory councils that have agreed to postpone this. She's given permission, not to all, roughly about half those who've asked for postponement have been given permission. We're told this is an attack on democracy. Is it?
No, it's not. It's delaying things for sensible reasons if you're going to reorganise. But I think we're getting a reorganisation completely wrong, because if we're going to operate as a United Kingdom, and here's my soapbox, I think England needs to have a devolved government that looks after English issues in the same way that Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland have, and Westminster then looks at national issues that transcend all of the devolved governments around the UK, and that would allow us to completely reform Westminster, completely reform our political process, and give the likes of Reform, Nigel Farage and all the rest of it, all the smaller parties, an opportunity to take real control in different areas, as we see in Scotland with the SNP, in Northern Ireland with Sinn Féin, in Wales, Plaid Cymru have got seats.
Very
and
interesting.
everything
Although,
else.
of course, then you end up with what basically called a postcode lottery of care, because different parts of the country run different policies, and everyone gets angry about that.
But we have at the moment anyway, because the NHS has devolved.
Yeah.
And this is where, if the Health Secretary in Westminster set national policy and said this is a policy that has to be applied in all of the areas, I don't care whether you call it Fred, Jane and Taff in different places,
but that's what you do.
Then that's what you do.
Didn't know where he was going with that. I was getting worried. Philip Ingram, thank you very much. We're going to take a quick break, then we get to your messages about Kemi Badenoch. Also want to be talking about police failing to act over the claims that Keir Starmer once again, and he did, I'm sorry, the beer and curry, there was definitely a breach of lockdown rules. I just simply never accepted that wasn't. But whether or not he's actually breached it again with meetings with his voice coach, urgent key worker meeting on Christmas Eve 2020. Quite a lot of other people were there. Gosh, was it a party?
No cake.
No cake.
Cake.
Might have been something else there. Anyway, we'll talk about that up next. This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense.
Government borrowing costs hit a 27-year high, and the pound is taking a pounding. Gloomy economic data is expected to show inflation and growth are off course.
Let me ask again, and can you please be clear? Will Rachel Reeves be your Chancellor for the duration of this parliament?
Rachel Reeves is doing a fantastic job. She has my full confidence. She has the full confidence of the entire party.
Can Rachel Reeves hold on as Chancellor?
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Is Talk, the home of common sense, with me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. I would love to ask you to give us a call, 0344 499 1000. That is the number. You already know it. But we are having a problem with our technical stuff. I don't understand it either. But we can't get your phone calls up on air at the moment, which I'm so sorry about. But you can, of course, still text in on 87222. You can get in touch on X at Talk TV as well. Let me get to some of the messages we have had coming in, particularly on Kemi Badenoch pledging that under a Tory government they would ban migrants who claim benefits from ever becoming British citizens or settling here permanently, but also meaning you have to wait an awful lot longer to be able to even apply to get indefinite leave to remain and to become a citizen. Although, again, I do think that most people are just surprised by how easy it currently is. And also, small point, you've been in government for a long time. Maybe you guys should have thought of this before. David says, empty words from a no mark, deluded if they think they have any other chance of being in charge again. Sarah says, a good policy, but it's a bit too late for the Tories. Reform's time to shine. John says, 10 years too late. Starmer is in power because the Tories have been putrid. Ian says she won't even be in charge and nothing she says can be implemented while we're in the ECHR. Michael says ridiculously simplistic. Kemi should come back with a far more detailed proposal. Brendan says stop the benefits or earn the right to them after working and paying tax for a number of years. And Lily says that's great news. That's the exact problem. Benefits. And that help should be for British people, not immigrants. And again, it seems to me to be blatantly obvious. Molly says good, but where was his attitude 10 years ago, even 5 years ago? Our country is broken. Very similar. I mean, apart from one of those positive messages, Philip, it's amazing how many people the reaction is. And a lot of these people, I think, people say they're voting reform, they're open about it. Many will have done so at the last election. Many will have been Tory voters previously, certainly 2019 Tory voters, get Brexit done, Boris voters, who are just totally disillusioned because Tories have talked a good game on these issues so many times. It's almost like, A, after 14 years, well, anything you say you want to do, you could have done before. Yep. And B, even when you say you're going to do it, we don't trust that you will do it because you didn't do the stuff you said you'd do before. How long, if there is an end date, will this be something that the Tories have to deal with?
Well, I think the Tories were still complaining about Labour having left no money 14 years after they were in power. So it's not going to go away. So unless Kemi Badenoch turns around and completely changes the way the Tory party is going to approach things, if she keeps using the same old arguments again, then Reform are going to keep winning. And Reform are then going to take the red wall Labour voters they're now targeting at the moment because Keir Starmer's clearly worried about it.
Absolutely, and my goodness, you can absolutely see that not just the Tories, because Kemi Badenoch being pushed into this position, I think. I think it's actually stuff that she does believe in anyway. I think she's actually, unlike a number of the other, Boris Johnson, he wanted to give an amnesty to illegal migrants, for goodness sake. I mean, an insane policy. He's the one who did the Boris way. 1 million plus people being given legal visas to come into the country. I mean, insane stuff under Boris Johnson. I do not understand how many people still think he's the answer to all our problems. He's part of the problem. Thank you for Brexit. I appreciate it. Move on. Go and earn money. I don't care, but I don't want you back in our politics. But But it is just that thing where people are just going to say, like, you had all these chances, you didn't do anything about it. At least I think Kemi Badenoch is ideologically committed to this. She speaks as someone from an immigrant family, and so she understands a lot of this more on a much more sort of basic level. But I just don't think that people are going to give the Tories the benefit of the doubt.
No, they're not. Rishi Sunak was from an immigrant family and got to be PM. The trouble is with the Tory party, and our commentator said earlier, they are a broad church, but that means there's little groups in them and they don't come together in unity.
It comes a point when you're too broad, that you're no longer inside the church. You're now spread around all the church.
And too many people are allowed or feel as if they're empowered to go and give their own opinions out that are against party policy. Yes, our leader says such and such, but my view is going to be, and they should just be kicked out of the party.
I don't have an issue with them saying. I would always rather people said things. It's one of the reasons I've not got into politics. I'd be terrible at keeping my mouth shut. I can't keep a gob shut over anything if I don't agree with it. But it's my thing. I want to know that they ideologically believe it. I mean, Boris Johnson said you can't be a Tory candidate in 2019 unless you fully sign up to getting Brexit done. Well, that's fine, all very well, but everyone signed up to it. But a huge number of those Tory MPs were actually completely Remainer through and through. That when they had that free vote, they voted Remain. Nothing wrong with that, but they didn't believe in the policy. Just finally, before we go to a break, I do want to ask you, in the next half hour, we're going to get an announcement from the Bank of England. The Monetary Policy Committee meet yesterday, and we're going to get the announcement today and the reasons why. This is related to interest rates. The expectation is, all the analysts are saying, so it probably won't happen because the experts are saying it.
Or the answer will be wrong.
Current rate of 4.75% will be cut by a quarter to 4.5%. A lot of people who are coming off fixed rate mortgages or variable mortgages right now will be just praying for that. A lot of businesses with big loans praying for that. Do you think it's going to happen?
I think it will happen, but the trouble is, the disruptor-in-chief, Donald Trump, is affecting global economics, and therefore any economic planning that's going on at the moment, people have got a very wary eye on it, because
probably not worried about inflationary pressures right now when people are basically not spending money because they ain't got any.
And a quarter of a percent isn't going to make a huge difference to the average mortgage. Yes, it does make a difference, but not a huge difference.
Yeah. OK, very interesting. Well, we'll find out at 12. We'll bring that news to you straight away. 11:33 is the time. We'll take a quick break. Up next, we're going to talk about just the latest police madness and why isn't Keir Starmer going to be investigated over possible lockdown breaches way back in 2020. This is Talk, the home of common sense.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk the Home of Common Sense with me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. Philip Ingram, former senior military intelligence officer, is with us still as well. And delighted to be joined now by policing, crime and justice commentator Danny Shaw. Very good morning to you, Danny.
Good morning, Julia.
Thanks for joining us. Lots to talk about. Let's get straight to it with the phone snatchers. Big issue, certainly in the capital city of London. I think it's a big issue elsewhere as well, where we've seen a £50 million crime wave with people just, riding by on the e-scooters and e-bikes, or just running past people, grabbing people's phones. A lot of us, wander along with our phone out, and we're seeing huge numbers of stolen mobiles. Mike Graham had it happen to him. Police officer who approached him said it had happened to him while he was in his uniform only a few weeks earlier. I mean, it's just on a grand scale. And the police say they are now going to fight back against this, Scotland Yard say. What are they going to do, and is it going to work?
Well, I think they've been carrying out a series of raids and interventions over the past week or so. They've seized over 1,000 phones, made 230 arrests. And that's typically what the police do, is rather than try and pick people off gradually over a period of time, they carry out a week of action which generates a lot of publicity and coverage, and they can focus all their resources on that issue. Now, that's great, but Julia, what we need
for that week
is we need a week of action every month, don't we? We need we need it to happen all the time. We can't just have this happening sort of once every 6 months, because the people who are arrested will then be bailed, they'll then be back on the streets, they'll then be committing more offences.
I mean, at least they're going to be arresting somebody. And the number of people I know, when their phone was stolen, they report to the police. You get here's a crime number. Oh, here's a note from victim support. That's it. They don't even do anything about it. They go, well, I can trace my phone to where it is. I have people to be able to trace they've literally watched people load their bike along with other people's bikes, things into a van with got the license plate, videoed the people doing it, not tackled them because it's a large bunch of men, and obviously calling the police at the time. Police doing absolutely nothing, just routinely doing nothing. So, I mean, as you say, they just want a bit of a nice headline, and we're supposed to go, oh, police crackdown, wonderful. But at the end of the day, these people are going to be back out on the streets, because let's face it, even if they are charged, we're going to be looking at months. My bag was stolen on the 1st of June last year. I'm still waiting for charges even to be brought, having provided a video of him literally stealing my bag on CCTV, and then another video of him later on after I tracked him down using my AirPods. I mean, I don't know how much more I could have done to provide them with the evidence, and there they are, and they still haven't made a charge.
That's a very typical story of what happened to you, Julia. I know so many people who've had a crime committed, not the most serious crime, but they've got CCTV, they've got dash cam, doorbell footage, or they've got the number plate of the vehicle involved, and then nothing ever happens. And I think that's simply partly because I think the Met is just completely swamped with crimes that they have to deal with. I think some of it's due to inexperience. But look,
I've got to be honest with you. No, it's down to an utter abject incompetence, actually. I mean, in terms of my dealings, and I was asked to provide a victim impact statement. Could be read out in court. Should there be any charges? Should it go to court? And I insisted that part of my victim impact statement, I've been a victim of crime, but I'm also a victim of the criminal justice system, because actually, dealing with this has been worse than having my bag stolen, because the abject failure of the authorities, whose my taxes pay the wages, to actually deal with this. But this is the key thing, isn't it? It's just this feeling that, they'll say, well, we're swamped with crime. Yeah, you're swamped with crime because the criminals are still on the street. The man who stole my bag, the man who stole, someone else's mobile phone yesterday, they're not, these aren't one-off crimes. They're not like innocently living a normal life, going to work and then, I just think I'll take Julia's bag or Mike's phone. This is what they do for a living. If you only have to catch one of these people, get them done for that. The string of offences, they'll end up in court, end up in prison, hopefully at some point after certain offences, and then you stop all these other crimes. They could cut the amount of crimes they have to investigate by actually investigating some crimes.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. That's what it's about. It should be fairly simple. But what needs to happen with these group of people, these offenders, is that this kind of concerted action needs to happen more often, so that the disruption gets to a point where they think it's just not worth it. It's when their life becomes really difficult because they're going to be caught, or because they're going to go through the courts, that they then decide to do something else. It's about disruption, and that's got to happen on a regular level. So
I think it needs to happen every single day. I just think it needs to happen every single. I think you just need to know if it's going to happen. Also, I don't understand why we've got. Well, I think other than Singapore or China, we've got the most CCTV in the world. what is the point of CCTV? If I was amazed as there was no CCTV in the pavement where I was a victim of theft. It was only like the supermarket inside. The security officer, who I know well, who actually managed to find a camera which happened to have the right angle. It's only because I know him. He wouldn't have been available otherwise. So the police had asked, they just said, we don't have any cameras, and they'd have gone away. It's only because I did that work and he did that work. But they said to me, oh yeah, we've had loads of theft outside. So there's loads of theft outside this store in broad daylight, and no one said, maybe we should put some CCTV here so we can catch these people, or maybe have some plainclothes officers around. I mean, and catch them in the habit, so they then stop doing it. I've never run a police force, but I think I'd be better at doing it than most people doing it right now.
I feel your pain. Look, I'm not here to defend all of his actions, but what I would say is that when you look at the mix of cases that they've had over the past 10, 15 years, there's been a huge rise in sexual offences reported to police, which is a good thing. Those offences are taken seriously, more serious than they used to be, and they do take a huge number of resources to investigate because they're not straightforward. And so I think there has been a shift to prioritising those sorts of offences and offences which cause the most harm. I'm not negating the seriousness of your incidents.
Of course me having my back. I mean, there was no violence, nothing. I wasn't traumatised by it. Absolutely, we should prioritise important stuff. Trouble is, those sex offences, if they do go to court, very few of them do, they're often waiting 3 or 4 years before anyone gets justice. So it's going wrong there. Can I ask you, though, is part of the problem that they are spending their money on frankly, an awful lot of abject nonsense? West Yorkshire Police alone, one police force, employs 19 DEI staff members, that diversity, equality and inclusion officers. They spent £361,000 of taxpayers' money training them, and they're spending £1.4 million in total on those officers. I mean, there are 45 different police forces in this country. That's just one police force. We're told we haven't got enough police resources. Things are tight. How do we do this? You're spending that much money on diversity officers? Come on.
I would want to know exactly what they're doing, and I would want there to be a clear audit trail of what they do, what work they do and what value it makes. Because I'm not going to condemn what they're doing, because there is one important point, Julia, is that if you want police to police all communities, and if you want police to represent all communities, then you have to at some point have an understanding of what that means in terms of diversity and inclusion.
No, you don't need a DEI officer. What you do is you police every community, everyone of every different colour, of nationality, gender, sexuality, the same. You don't need to have training in that. That's what you've been doing all along.
Well, I would want to know what exactly they're doing. I don't think it's quite as simple as you say, but I do raise concerns about the amount of money that's spent on that, and I do worry that it becomes a bit of a talking shop with endless guidelines and guidance that really doesn't end up
stops you doing your job. DEI is not about treating people equally. It's about treating people differently according to their innate characteristics. That is what we used to call racism and sexism and homophobia. But I mean, now we use a different word. We use DEI, we use the phrase DEI. But let me ask you just about one final story, though. Lots of stories in recent weeks about Keir Starmer and a possible another breach of lockdown rules. Now, police decided he hadn't actually done anything wrong with his curry and beer night during election campaigning way back during lockdown. I think the police were wrong on that. I think it was. I know the rules at the time. I was talking about them on air every day. I was reading the actual rules, in real time in black and white. Quite clear to me that it was a breach of those rules. I think they got that wrong. This time round, police are saying they're not going to act over Keir Starmer's lockdown session with voice coach, an actress who was known to him as a friend. They're saying that this is a lady by the name of Leonie Mellinger. They're saying that it was more than 3 years ago. Number 10 said it couldn't have been a voice coaching in over Zoom, even though all of her other lessons were over Zoom, and previous lessons with him and coaching sessions were on Zoom. This one had to be in person. It was on Christmas Eve 2020. She came to London into Tier 4. Weren't allowed to travel from Tier 3 to Tier 4 as she did at the time. Tier 4 was to all intents and purposes lockdown. You were required to work from home. Seems to me to be a blatant, obvious breach. Should the police investigate, or is it, time has passed, it's not relevant anymore?
Well, to go back to your previous issue, Julia, I'd rather they'd be investigating the crimes against you than a lockdown breach from 4 years ago. frankly, these were fairly minor offences in terms of the punishments, the fixed penalty fines and so on. I think there has to be a time limit on it. Otherwise, where do we draw the line? It seems to me that it's questionable whether she was really acting, out of necessity in terms of work. I think it's questionable, but to be honest, Julia, I think we've got to draw a line under this now. What's done is done. I don't want the police to be wasting their time going back pursuing fines.
I understand that. And again, you're right. Let's prioritise stuff happening in real world right now where no harm has been done in that case. But there was harm done to other people who were obeying the rules strictly and didn't get to see loved ones, even loved ones who were dying. I mean, I just think there are an awful lot of people, and I'm among them, who are just never going to forgive that. But yeah, at least we know about how hypocritical he was. Danny Shaw, really appreciate you joining us. Thank you for that. We covered a lot of ground. Philip Ingram, again, it's not the biggest thing in the world. I get that, but an awful lot of people, certainly our audience, who stuck with us through those mad years, we'll still just say, look, I didn't see my grandfather before he died. I wasn't able to be with my wife when she was in labour. I didn't get to meet my grandchildren. I lost my job. I lost my livelihood. My business went under. Oh, but it was OK for Keir Starmer to hang out with an actress, apparently being very bad at her job, teaching him how to speak better.
Well, yeah, exactly. And all of those people that suffered because of the rules, because they applied the rules. And actually, if you look at the impact that Keir Starmer had, and this is where I don't think there should be a statute of limitations, the impact that he had in criticising Boris Johnson and Rishi Sunak as the Chancellor at the time. You took parliamentary time away, cost us money, took us to a general election. You brought a change of government in. They wasted time that should have been concentrated on dealing with the laws that are needed to tighten up against those that are being suffering more serious crimes and everything else. But no. Starmer's priority was cake and wine in Downing Street, and there wasn't a day that went past where that wasn't the top thing that he talked about.
The key thing for most people is that they're all hypocrites. It is my view that the vast majority of politicians and the media, that all that lot in the media, we know an awful lot of them, wagging their fingers at everyone and telling everyone to obey the rules, were not obeying the rules in their private lives because they're hypocrites and because they thought the rules were for the little people, us stupid people who couldn't be trusted, but they didn't need to obey them. That's what they thought in Downing Street. That's what they saw in Number 10. That's what they thought. At Sky News, and that is what they thought. They were busy breaking all the rules when it suited them because they thought they knew better, but we couldn't be trusted. I'm sorry, I don't want people who think that to have any power over my country or me or anyone else. 11:49 is the time. We're going to take a quick break. We're going to talk about Trump's plan for Gaza. As he's just posted on his Truth Social site, would the Palestinian people be happy, safe and free if they did have a chance to leave? Or should they be forced to leave under his plan? We'll talk about that up next. This is Talk.
Yeah, none of this stuff is evidence-based. And as you say, we see advertisements for diversity, equity, inclusion directors and officers that are often kind of 70 grand, 80 grand jobs. The NHS actually has over 10,000 roles that are in some way related to diversity, equity, inclusion. It spends £500 million on it every year. And in my opinion, the whole stuff is just snake oil because, as you say, it's not based on any evidence. And actually, there's overwhelming evidence now that it's doing harm. It's causing... it's affecting workplace harmony.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense with me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. Let's get straight to our next guest and talk about, well, Donald Trump's plan for Gaza, which he insists everyone loves. But do they? Let's talk about this with Dr. Ashok Kumar. He's an Associate Professor of Political Economy at Birkbeck University. Very good morning to you.
Morning, Julia.
Thanks so much for joining us. Now, just to get you up to date, in the last 10 minutes or so, Donald Trump has posted on Truth Social to say the Gaza Strip would be turned over to the United States by Israel at the conclusion of the fighting. That's what he's planning. The Palestinians, people like Chuck Schumer, would have already been resettled in... I don't know where that makes sense, would have already been resettled in far safer and more beautiful communities with new and modern homes in the region. They would actually have a chance to be happy, safe and free. The US, working with great development teams from all over the world, would slowly and carefully begin the construction of what would become one of the greatest and most spectacular developments of its kind on Earth. No soldiers by the US would be needed. Stability for the region would reign. He's very positive about it. Are you?
Look, I think that... I think there's a general acceptance that Trump's plan to turn Gaza into the Riviera is as absurd as when Trump said he was going to make Canada the 51st state, or he was going to invade and occupy Greenland, or that he was going to invade and occupy Panama. He's threatened to invade and occupy a new state or country or land every 72 hours since he came into office. So I think...
That's a fair analysis. Well, often these threats seem to work quite well. It certainly did with Panama, didn't it? I mean, you could see, Benjamin Netanyahu was there when this announcement was made and was looking rather pleased, but a little bit somewhat shocked about it. The reality is he's changed an awful lot from whether it was going to be permanent removal, temporary removal, forcibly, not forcibly, didn't commit that it would be US troops, didn't say he wouldn't have US troops. American people, American Congress are not going to want to send US troops over to Gaza to police that, and whether or not that would actually lead to greater peace. Is there, though, as my guest actually, Philip Ingram, a former senior military intelligence officer, pointed out, is this actually more of Donald Trump being the disruptor, basically sort of throwing a sort of game-changer idea in there, discombobulating perhaps all sides, calling out some lies, all these Arab countries that say they're so supportive of the Palestinian people. OK, can you take some of these refugees then? Oh, no, we don't want them, they say. Can this actually help promote peace? That actually, things that he's done, moving the US embassy to Jerusalem, helping with the Abraham Accords in terms of bringing normalised relations between Israel and the UAE and moving towards Saudi Arabia, which was what was going to happen before we had the October the 7th attack, that actually he thinks outside of the box, and as mad as a lot of his ideas sound, they pretty soon become the norm.
Well, a few things. I think to give Donald Trump credit, while Biden and Kamala were dithering for 14 months and providing arms to Israel, Trump came in and forced a ceasefire. So, we have to recognize a lot of liberals are up in arms about what he said, but I'm more worried about what Biden and Kamala did than what Trump said, first of all. Secondly,
I'm still unhappy about their criticism of Israel up to the kowtow to constituencies in the US, but there we are.
The second point is, yes, other countries, Arab countries, don't want to take Palestinians because they don't want to be complicit in ethnic cleansing.
No, because they don't want a radicalized population. That's not why they don't want to take the Palestinian people from Gaza.
There's no reason why they should be taking them. No country in there would want to be complicit in this act. The third point is that the idea that Trump can simply say that Palestinians are going to be moved out and somehow that's going to happen. I mean, Israel and America have been trying to do that for 15 months, bombing them, destroying 97% of all buildings, and they haven't. They haven't been successful. They've been unsuccessful. You know, if you read the general's plan by Israel, they wanted to move out everyone from northern Gaza, unsuccessful. They wanted to destroy the tunnels, unsuccessful. They wanted to dismantle Hamas, unsuccessful. The idea that Trump can, send in troops? They tried it in Vietnam, they tried it in Iraq, they tried it in Afghanistan, and they left.
But you say, you say they were successful. They did move the people of Gaza from the north down to the south. They weren't bombing the people of Gaza. They were bombing infrastructure. There's a lot of evidence they've destroyed an awful lot of the tunnel network, actually. I mean, is Hamas the winner in this war?
Well, the point is, in a guerrilla warfare, if you don't lose, you're the winner. I mean, that's a pretty standard acceptance of asymmetrical warfare.
Here's the thing. Israel have made it really clear. We're starting the negotiations for the second phase of this ceasefire deal. Haven't even got all the live hostages out, let alone the dead bodies of those hostages who've already been killed. Israel have made it really clear they cannot go back to the status quo ante. They cannot have a situation where they've got a terrorist organisation that wants Israel to destroyed and every Jew killed on their border. That's not going to be allowed to happen. They're just going to go back in again and again.
The claim that they want every Jew killed. Every Jew killed. I'm going to have to call that out.
It's literally in their constitution.
It's not. I mean, they had a new constitution written in
2007. Eradicate the state of Israel and everyone.
Eradicating the state of Israel, but you're conflating Jews with Israel. That's like conflating all Muslims with ISIS. I think that's really. I wouldn't blame all Jews for the crimes and the war crimes of Israel.
They haven't committed war crimes.
That's a textbook case of anti-Semitism, Julia. I really wouldn't go there.
That's abject.
But I just really wouldn't go there.
Don't tell me what I can and can't say. I don't want your advice, even.
I'm not telling you what you can and can't say. I'm telling you,
it absolutely isn't.
Conflating the crimes of Israel with Judaism is anti-Semitism.
No,
so, I'm referring to the
Ashok, Hamas don't want to destroy Israel because of the crimes of Israel. They want to destroy Israel. That's literally as an entity, and take that land, which they claim is theirs, and eradicate every Jew from the Middle East.
Under international law and the UN core conventions, Palestinians have a right of return to the lands that they were dispossessed from. All refugees have a right of return. So the demands that they're making.
Okay, here's the thing. It's not. Okay, none of that is going to happen. So what are the options? Now, well, look, we're annoyingly we are out of time. I'll get you back on again very soon so we can talk about this at greater length. But basically, fundamentally, do you think we are going to see anything of what Donald Trump has said, just in like 10 seconds? Is any
Absolutely not. It's not going to happen.
Okay, thank you for keeping it short. Dr. Ashok Kumar, Associate Professor of Political Economy at Birkbeck University. Thank you very much indeed for that. Coming up in just a few moments, we're going to get that decision by the Bank of England on interest rates expectation. We are going to see a quarter-point fall in the interest rates. Good news if you're on a high mortgage, got big business loans as well. We'll bring you that news as soon as we've got it. Lots more to talk about. That's all coming up here, and Philip Ingram will get his thoughts on what Ashok Kumar just had to say as well. This is Talk. We are the home of common sense.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
A very, very good afternoon to you. Welcome back to the show. It's coming up to 3 minutes past 12 o'clock. This is Talk, the home of common sense, and whether you're listening on DAB+ radio or on your smart smart speaker, or watching on YouTube or your connection device, it is great to have your company today. In the last couple of moments, we have had that announcement from the Bank of England Monetary Policy Committee. Interest rates are going to be cut. Analysts had predicted a quarter-point cut, and that is exactly what's happened. The base rate has been cut from 4.75% to 4.5%. It is the third time the interest rates have been cut since August 2023, when those, well, actually they were going sky high in 2022, weren't they? Good news if you're on a mortgage, coming off a fixed rate, on a variable rate, or indeed got a business loan. So good news for an awful lot of people. Okay, of course, we always see the savings rates at building societies and banks go down far quicker than we see those mortgage rates go down, don't we? We'll talk about that with Justin Urquhart-Stewart in just a couple of moments. Also going to be talking about migrants who claim benefits to be banned from ever becoming British citizens under Tory leader Kemi Badenoch's plans to tackle immigration, and civil service officials risking losing their jobs unless they actually find ways to save money from their Whitehall budgets. Do you believe that'll ever happen? Come on, give me a break. Well, that's what ministers are announcing today. Also, I'm going to be talking to the wonderful Sharon Davies about Donald Trump announcing that he's going to ensure that no trans athletes are going to be able to participate in the wrong gender sports at the 2028 Summer Olympics in Los Angeles. The US president yesterday signed an executive order barring trans participation by, well, trans women, i.e. men, participating in women's sports. Don't we need that to be across the board here as well? And the harm created by social media is similar to the cancer caused by smoking. Who said that? Well, Britain's head of counter-terrorism is saying it. He's called for a ban on social media being used by children. A lot of us who don't like things being banned generally might perhaps be in agreement with that, eh? We'll talk about all of that coming up. Coming up in the next 10 minutes or so, we are going to be talking to former Downing Street Chief of Staff Lord Barwell. He was Chief of Staff to Theresa May when she was Prime Minister. First up, though, let's talk about that interest rate cut with Justin Urquhart-Stewart. He's an economist and he's also chairman of Regionally Investment Platform. Very good afternoon to you, Justin.
Afternoon, Julia.
So this is what the experts had said was going to happen, and unusually the experts were right. It has happened. Why have they decided to cut rates now?
Well, they finally realised that to get the economy moving, as everyone keeps on going about growth the entire time, you have to reduce the cost of money. If you really want to get this economy moving, yes, it's that vital word confidence, but actually what's most important to people in Britain tends to be their biggest asset, which is their house. Yeah. So if you encourage people actually either buying a house, and buying or selling, or upgrading their house, something like that, actually what happens is you go out and, well, the kitchen goes, the bathroom goes, you spend more money.
Yeah, you got to deal with stamp duty if you're going to deal with that. I'm sorry, stamp duty is the single biggest stopper for that.
And what they should do is reform that. In my view, stamp duty is the wrong way around anyway. There's nothing they can do about it on that, because the person who makes money out of stamp duty, really, it should be actually the people who are actually having to pay stamp duty when you're buying. Actually, the people making the profit are the people normally selling.
But also it shouldn't be an absolute fortune because, as you say, the impact of people moving. So you can buy a one-bed home, and then you can buy a two-bed home when you have kids, and then if you have another kid, you can buy a three-bed home. Otherwise, we've got people now going, well, I need to have the one home I'm going to have for years because and people don't downsize. I think stamp duty is just an absolute disaster of a policy. But is that going to be enough? Because cutting the cost of money, 4.5%, okay, historically pretty low. But people got used to, didn't they, this sort of new 0.25% interest rate. When homes, and particularly this is what affects for most people, my audience right now, what affects them massively, as you say, is the cost of a mortgage. When actually home prices are still sky high relative to people's incomes, does it make much difference, or if interest is 4.75 base rate or 4.5% base rate? Is it about the direction of travel, or is it the amount?
Well, I mean, it's encouraging it's moving because actually some of the figures we've had out are talking about very low growth. They're talking about potential inflation getting a bit higher. So usually a very conservative Bank of England would have said, actually, we're going to hold rates as they are.
Yeah.
I would be encouraging the government to say, look, forget that. Bank of England does not necessarily control interest rates. Interest rates are under control of the government. They can actually take that power back anytime they like.
Yeah.
They should significantly reduce the cost of money, not by 1/4, but by 0.5%. Making a significant difference to all of this. And as to stamp duty, you should say anything, say, what set the figure? 500,000, 750,000, anything below that, you don't actually have to pay stamp duty for the next X number of years. Get that moving again, and you'll start seeing some difference.
But again, we've always got that balance, haven't we? Of like, if you get the economy moving too much, you get more inflation. I mean, again, we're already seeing, lots of prices. Energy prices are still expected to go up. Food prices still are going up. And I'm always amazed with government ministers saying we're going to have more money in our pockets. No, inflation is still rising. Prices are still going up. What about how this impacts business? Because we've seen massive impacts on business. £25 billion tax on jobs, national insurance rises, and the threshold moving down as well for when you have to start paying it. That's had a massive, massive impact. There are an awful lot of businesses who took out loans, particularly businesses who just sort of struggled through lockdown periods. Interest rates on their loans is a big issue as well. Will this help people?
Right, this is a key element because remember the biggest employer, I know we discussed this before, is in this country are smaller businesses. We're really good at it. We set up more businesses than actually France and Germany put together. And in order to do so, you need the confidence and the courage to be able to do so, because often you're putting up your house as guarantee and things like that to be able to do it. So people need that confidence. So yes, this helps, but there's a lot more the government can do without spending money to be able to encourage this. We have the enterprise investment schemes. You could do that on a regional basis. You can focus that on the technology centres we've got around the country, the success areas where actually we're really rather good at, which we don't hear too much about.
Yeah.
So the government could do a lot more than just this. 0.25%, yes, thank you, but it's not very dramatic. It's not going to make people get terribly excited and rush off and go and set up another business. What you need to do is to actually say, right, okay, here we have a plan which is actually going to not just reduce the cost of money, but encourage people to be investing and setting up, getting that vital word of confidence back, and then encourage those people, particularly the lowest area of the housing market, to go out to be buying and selling and then spending, doing up their houses. They and VAT.
It's all joined up, but it always comes back to, and it's a subject you come back to again and again, it comes back to confidence. Justin Urquhart-Stewart, always great to talk to you and see your red braces as well. Economist and chairman of the Regionally Investment Platform. Thank you very much, Steve, for that. Philip Ingram has been joining me throughout the show. He's still here. He's Philip Ingram MBE, he's a former senior military intelligence officer. Again, I don't understand why these decisions are taken by the Bank of England and not by politicians. These are ultimately political, not economic decisions. Even the economic decisions, they have a political bias. Your theory about what motivates people will be motivating the members of the Monetary Policy Committee. But do you welcome this change?
I do, because hopefully it's the green shoot of the economy getting better. But I think there's too many other indicators with employment losses, companies closing down, and all the rest of it to suggest that the Bank of England is slightly concerned that maybe what they had done for too much beforehand they need to try and correct because the economy is not in as good a position as they thought it was. But the global economies are being disrupted by the disruptor-in-chief because of all the statements he's putting out. People can't plan things. They don't know. And countries don't like that. Economies don't like that. Politicians don't like that. World leaders don't like that.
Yeah, and the reality is, of course, that actually an awful lot of what happens in our economy is totally outside of our control. Whether it's, what lockdown, even if we'd never lockdown policies, Ukraine war, and you say Donald Trump. Absolutely fascinating. Thank you very much indeed. Right, well, let's go to our next guest in this hour. Here's Lord Barber. Gavin Barber was a former Downing Street Chief of Staff to Theresa May when she was Prime Minister. And he joins us now. A very good afternoon to you, Gavin.
Afternoon, Julia. Good to see you.
Thank you very much for joining us. I just wondering if your reaction to that interest rate cut, because we're told constantly by this government that's growth. We're not seeing any growth at all. Things have got even worse than when your party was in charge. Do you think this interest rate cut is going to help, though?
I think that it's bound to help a bit. I think the cost of borrowing needed to come down. The Bank of England was quite slow to raise rates when we had the original inflation spike, and it's been quite slow to bring them down afterwards, I would argue. It's not helped, I think, by what's going on in the US. There's obviously quite a lot of uncertainty about exactly what Donald Trump will do and what's the inflationary impact of them. But it's certainly from Rachel Reeves' perspective, welcome news this morning, I think.
Okay, well, indeed. Well, let's talk about whether or not you welcome the first major policy announcement we've had from Kemi Badenoch, the leader of your party. She said she wasn't going to make any policy commitments for for 2 years, but here we are, a few weeks later. She's got a policy commitment. She's pledging to ban migrants who claim benefits from ever having the right to become a UK citizen. She wants to actually lengthen the time that people would actually have to be in the country working here before they could apply for indefinite leave to remain. Currently, it's only 5 years. She says it should be 10. But also, you cannot apply for British citizenship until 5 years later. First of all, why have we suddenly got a policy announcement when we weren't expecting any for a couple of years? And secondly, do you not think that most voters will be quite surprised by just how quick and easy the process for becoming a British citizen and getting the right to live here forever has been until, well, right now?
Which one do you want me to do first?
Whichever you choose.
Well, should we do the second question, because the more substantive one?
Okay.
You might be a little bit surprised, but I'm quite sympathetic to this policy announcement. I think that you're right. So you know my views on immigration. I think this country needs economic migration. We've got an ageing population. If we don't have it, then we're going to have fewer working age people, more retired people. But people need to recognise that there is huge public concern about the levels that we've had in recent years. They need to come down. And I think one of the interesting ideas is whether you should separate economic migration from access to citizenship. In other words, should we say, look, you can come here for a few years and you can work and improve your lot in life and take that money home to your family, but you don't get an automatic path to citizenship when you do that. I think, liberal-minded people like myself that want to make the case for immigration, we have to listen to public opinion and the concerns people have. And so I think Kemi is potentially onto something interesting here about saying it shouldn't be so quick and automatic that if you come to the UK to work for a bit, you have an immediate path to citizenship.
But if it was up to you, it would remain quick and automatic.
No,
Okay.
I think that there is a case for separating.
No, but you're saying we should listen to the public, as in implying it's not what I think, but it's what the public think.
No, I'm not quite saying that. I think there is a genuine concern about this issue, and what I care about is making sure that we've got the workforce that we need economically to generate the growth.
All right, and before I let you,
necessarily mean we have to have a path to citizenship as a result.
Before I let you get on to the first part of my question, I promise we won't leave that behind. You're saying we need immigration because we've got an ageing population. What we need is for people who are already here to have lots more babies. They can't do that because they can't afford to get a home. I know so many young people say, well, we can't afford a home. We don't even have a home yet. So how can we possibly, start a family? We're not committed. They can't do that because of long-term policies pursued by both Labour and the Tories. You guys were in power for 14 years, not actually dealing with that issue. And because they've got university debt, it's got these issues, and these mad hysterics on the climate saying, oh, well, the planet's going to end, so God forbid we shouldn't have children. The solution to an ageing population is the people here already having more babies. Most people who haven't got a child would like to have had a child. Most people who've got one would have liked two. Most people who've got two. Actually, many of those would have liked to have had 3 kids. We make it impossible with government policies over the last 20, 30 years for people to have as many children as they want. That's the solution, not immigration.
So 3 quick things. First of all, I'm not sure that is entirely true that everybody that would like more children than they have.
I said most people. The polling on this is actually very clear.
Well, you can share that with me separately afterwards. But what I'd observe to you is that the birth rates are falling in virtually every major advanced economy in the world. There is a wider trend here of people having less children. Now, you're absolutely right. There are some people who can't have children when they want them, and absolutely we need to address those cost of living issues. But even if you were able to significantly increase the birth rate today with the flick of your fingers, it would be 20 years before those people were in the workforce. So that is not an immediate solution to the problem. So
I didn't say it was an immediate solution to the problem, but neither is bringing in another 1 million people from abroad a solution to the problem, because it creates a bigger problem, which is they need somewhere to live.
Yes. So you've got to get the balance right, obviously, right? But the point that I would make to you is there is a difference between asylum and immigration. Right? Asylum is an act of charity, and we can have a debate.
I wasn't talking about asylum. I was talking about immigration.
I know, but I'm trying to make a point to you. Right? Asylum is an act of charity, so we can debate about how much charity we want to offer as a country. But immigration should be purely selfish. We should only let in people into the country under the immigration system who we think are going to benefit the country from coming here. So there is a debate about what the total number should be. And I think there's also a debate that gets left out about quality. One of the things that went wrong under Boris Johnson is a big shift in who was coming in. So the net migration we're having at the moment is not only much higher than it used to be, but it's less economically additive than it used to be.
Yeah.
But we should be able to have a sensible debate as a country about what do we need.
No, Gavin, loads of us have been able to have that debate and trying to have that debate for, I mean, God, I've been talking about this stuff since, about late 90s, early 2000s. And then an awful lot of the so-called liberals, or your mates, just shouted bigot and racist and xenophobe at me. That was the trouble, but it didn't get discussed when most people said we do need to discuss it. And but
I am gently trying to say to you that I'm not sure just saying have more babies is an answer to the problem.
I'm saying it's a big part. It's actually
for the next
very
20 years. It can't be, right? For the next 20 years.
But importing 1 million more people a year doesn't solve the problem either.
No, so
those people also age.
I would entirely agree with you that the levels of net migration we've had in recent years are completely unsustainable. And one of the most incredible things that's happened in our politics is that Boris Johnson won the Brexit referendum largely on the issue of immigration and then trebled immigration. I mean, it's an absurd thing,
I think it was this an absolute betrayal of the British people. His view was he was controlling it by handing out those legal visas. And again, we were not made aware of that until after the fact. That's the thing.
It's understandable people feel angry about that. Having voted for one thing and then not got it. Right?
Yeah, well, we've done that since 2010. I mean, we were promised, net migration in the tens of thousands, for goodness sake. I mean, simpler, happier times, but no one believes that. Here's the thing. So Kemi Badenoch has made this pledge now. All sounds perfectly sensible to me. I'm amazed that we don't already have these rules anyway. It's still stunning that the policies that have been in place for years. Why has she made that announcement now? Is she being squeezed by reform? Is she running scared from reform? Because she said she wasn't going to make policy for a couple of years.
Yeah, look, I think she's under political pressure, and therefore she's taken the view that she's got to come out with some policies. I actually think her original position in normal political circumstances would be a sensible one, that when you lose an election, you take a bit of time to reflect on why you lost, think about not what the challenges of the country are right now, but what they might be in 4 years' time, and you slowly build up policy. Because if you rush, the policies you announce may not be right for 4 years, and actually the government may just nick some of the sensible ones. But however you want to describe it in emotive terms, she's under huge political pressure because the Conservative Party is caught in this pincer between the government and reform on the other hand. So she's probably feeling that she's under pressure to have to come up with some ideas earlier than maybe she would have liked to.
I mean, it was interesting that Keir Starmer, I thought yesterday, he mentioned reform twice during PMQs. Nigel Farage had a question. He was asking about the Chagos plan. And we've seen this surge in reform, not just beating the Tories, and yes, within the margin of error, but nevertheless, the momentum is certainly with reform at the current time, but also beating Labour. How worried should both of those parties be?
I think it's a serious threat that both of them. I mean, the threat to Labour is the more obvious one in a way, because if you look at the seats, the polls are saying that Reform are going to win. They're mainly Labour seats. But the long-term threat to the Conservatives is actually maybe more significant, which is there's a risk that they get displaced as the main party of opposition. Now, for what it's worth, I think that would be a very bad thing for the country. But both of those main parties, because you know where I stand politically. I'm on the centre right, and I don't think the kind of populist right politics that Farage offers will actually be a good long-term solution for the country. But
like
whatever,
what? Like getting rid of net zero, limiting legal
getting rid of net zero. Let's start with that, right? We're facing a serious problem with our climate, which he doesn't take seriously. He doesn't take most things seriously. It's all
he does take it. He takes impoverishing the British people and deindustrialising our nation very seriously. I know that. I've had conversations with him about this.
So that's an argument about how you decarbonise. It's not. You can't just pretend.
No, you're fully signed up to Tory and Labour and Lib Dem policies on net zero, which would impoverish and deindustrialise our country.
There's the question about the how you do it, but the reality is we can't just wish this problem away.
Well,
this is what populists do. They just
it's
say
whether you view it as a problem or not. I don't view climate change as remotely a problem.
Well, so look at what's happened in the last 12 months. Look at the flooding in Central and Eastern Europe, the hurricanes. If you're going to pretend this is just random weather, you're not engaging in the real world.
My love, you really need to read up on this. There is simply no evidence. There is no evidence whatsoever that this is as a result of climate change.
Is there evidence that carbon is increasing in the atmosphere? Yes or no? Yes or no? Is there evidence?
I mean, from China and everyone. Do I believe that climate change is linked to
are greenhouse gases increasing in the atmosphere? Yes or no?
Well, apart from our country, obviously, no. Yes. But do I think that is linked to climate change? That is the theory based on computer modelling. Do I believe that this is man-made climate change? No, I do not. But that's not the conversation. The conversation is about the policies. Policies that would impoverish and deindustrialise this country and put us back, limit our freedoms. You know, you see, look, you worked in Number 10. You know what your boss, Theresa May, put into law. Policies under net zero that would take away basic freedoms from people, the ability to own your car, to fly. There is no way any of these policies can be achieved without... No, the Climate Change Committee has published documents. They're the official advisors to all the government leaders on this. You know what those documents say as well as I do, and they make it very clear that about 60% of their ability to deal with this issue, they claim, by cutting our carbon emissions and getting to net zero, would have to be about lifestyle changes, people not being able to afford to fly, to own a car, to eat meat and live a normal life. I'm sorry, this is about impoverishing and just deindustrialising our nation and turning back the clock. No, I do not want us to do that.
Who would want to impoverish our nation?
This is the question I've been asking myself.
But you should ask yourself why you're suggesting people would do that.
Because this is fundamentally a
stop people drive cars. Nobody is trying to stop people taking foreign holidays.
Gavin, this is a lie. Gavin, with all due respect, I've known you a long time. That is a lie. It is impossible to achieve net zero. It is written in black and white in the advice from the official government advisors on this that the only way you would achieve this, I don't think anyone would achieve it, I think it's impossible and unachievable and far too expensive, would be to adjust people's lifestyles.
Behaviour change can happen without the government forcing people not to do so.
Yeah, here's the behaviour change. You can't afford to fly. Here's the behaviour change. You can't afford to own a car. There's your behaviour change. But that's a lie. People's lives would be impoverished. We will deindustrialise our nation, and that's the only way it's going to be achieved. And it still won't achieve anything because it won't make a damn bit of difference to how warm the Pacific Ocean is. It's a load of abject nonsense. It's Greta Thunberg, hysterical teenage religious zealotry. And it still amazes me that so many in the so-called centre ground of British politics have signed up to this madness.
Right? There is a very widespread consensus on the science that climate change is a problem. You want to have a debate about how to do it, that's fine. But if you are really maintaining
that's the debate we're having.
That putting greenhouse gases in the atmosphere doesn't have any effect on the climate of the planet, then I'm afraid, Julie, you've sort of left...
I hate to tell you, that's still a theory, and it's based on computer modelling.
So everything is a theory in science, right? You can't fundamentally...
Which is why there's no settled science. But here's the thing, which is why we don't shut down the debate on these issues, and scientists who don't...
I've just spent 20 minutes debating with you. No one's trying to shut you down.
No, I'm not saying you are.
You're not looking at the evidence.
Climate scientists go out of their way to shut down anybody who disagrees with them. They quite deliberately, they defund them. They are sacked by their universities and academia. This is on a grand scale. Look, I don't want to get waylaid on this. I'm going to ask you about something different before we go to a break, Gavin. Let's talk about Keir Starmer. Do you believe that his session with a voice coach, an actress called Leonie Mellinger, on Christmas Eve 2020, when London was in Tier 4, she had to travel from outside Tier 4 to meet with him in person to advise him, apparently not very well, on how to give a speech to the nation about Boris's Brexit deal. Do you believe that that was a breach of lockdown rules at the time? And if it was, should the police investigate?
I well past remembering all of the details of the rules, but it sounds to me like it wasn't consistent with how I remember the rules. That's all I can say to you.
He broke the rules. So if he did break the rules, I mean, it was definitely a breach of the rules. Right? Should the police investigate?
Well, that's a decision for the police. It's not a decision for
No, I'm asking your opinion.
Tell the police what to do. But if people have made an allegation, I don't know what the rules are about timeliness of when. How long ago these things can be investigated, but if it's within the legal timetable, then obviously if people are making an allegation, it should be investigated.
You supported all these rules at the time. Did you obey the letter of the law?
I did obey
at all times.
Yeah, I did. Yes.
I don't believe that anyone in anywhere in our legislature or this. I don't believe they did.
Why don't you believe that?
because I think an awful lot of people making those decisions, as we saw in Downing Street and elsewhere, actually just thought that they knew better, and the laws were for us little people who couldn't be trusted.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's definitely the case that what Dominic Cummings did, which is maybe the highest profile example of that, has a terrible effect, doesn't it, of people making people believe that politicians don't obey. All I can say to you is I'm pretty sure if my old boss had been Prime Minister at that time, there would have been a very different approach to how Downing Street operated during that period.
Very well. What I'd have preferred is that we were all allowed to do what we wanted. But there we are. Lord Barwell, Gavin Barwell, so appreciate you joining. Scott Lively. Oh, I'm sure we'll come back to this many, many times. Former Downing Street Chief of Staff to Theresa May when she was Prime Minister. Philip Ingram, listening to all of that with great interest. I'll let you free. What do you want to say?
Well, yeah, it's interesting. I think, if given everything Keir Starmer's said the whole way through the COVID and the way he attacked Boris Johnson, Rishi Sunak and all the rest of it, if it's gone beyond the statute of limitations, he should fess up now and say, yes, I broke the rules.
But then he would be a hypocrite.
Well, but everyone thinks he's a hypocrite anyway. So
do you think the damage is done either way?
I think the damage is done either way, but the only way that he can start to limit that damage is to start to be honest instead of perpetuating the hypocrisy that's going on. And we need some honesty back in our politics.
Yeah, that would be nice, wouldn't it? 12:27 is the time. Up next, we're going to read out some of your messages coming in, particularly on Kemi Badenoch and that migration issue. I'm really sorry, we've still got a problem with our phone system. So I mean, I'd love to push for more telephone calls from you, but I've got them flashing on the board, the ones that are already there, and we can't answer them, and we can't call you back. I'm so sorry about that. Please don't think I'm ignoring you. I'd love to get you on air, as I normally do, but we can get your texts and your tweets, so we'll get to some of those up next. After that, we're going to be talking to the wonderful Sharon Davies, who's been on the right side of this big debate for a long time, as Donald Trump basically says, yeah, if you're a man, you can't compete in women's sports. Doesn't matter whether you're doing it at the age of 6 at primary school, you're doing it at high school, in college, or even at the LA Olympics in 2028. If you're a man, you're going to compete against other men. Whoop, whoop. Finally, some sanity. We'll talk to her about that. This is Talk.
He should resign because he's been found out. That's absolutely wretched, right?
She advertises. I can do it on Zoom if you prefer.
Yeah. Yeah. So, look, there's something else going on here, isn't there? Christmas Eve, an absolutely necessary voice coaching session on Christmas Eve. I don't buy it. I just don't buy it. I think Mrs. Starmer needs to have a word with a voice coach.
Yeah, I'm wondering whether or not, her name is Leonie Mellinger, whether or not she's some kind of friend of the Starmers or something.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the home of common sense. Thank you very much, Steve, for joining me. Well, we're quite long talking to Gavin Barwell, but Philip Ingram is still with me. Let's just get some of the messages people are getting in touch about Tory leader Kemi Badenoch pledging to ban migrants who claim benefits from ever becoming British citizens or settling here permanently. Your reaction to that, a lot of you basically think, well, fine, but I don't trust the Tories to do anything about it. Brian says once they get in, it's hard to get them out. So by saying ban them for settling there permanently, she's saying she will still allow them to come in. Finlay says just like the Tories said, net migration in tens of thousands for 14 years they were in power. He says your party has no credibility left, Kemi. Mia says, why does anyone here think they have any public interest in mind? Time has shown they master the parties. They master... I've got you. Please read your messages before you send them. At this point, if you're buying into the sham of fakeocracy, then perhaps you deserve your rulers. Phil says it's a pity she wasn't a leader instead of wishy-washy Sunak, because of his spineless approach, we are now stuck with Labour. This is true. If Rishi Sunak had stuck back, some of the things he said some good stuff when he became Prime Minister and in the subsequent months, and then he backtracked on everything because he just didn't really believe in it. Veronica says, weak leadership, you need to come out of the ECHR for starters, and if this person is all the Tory party have, then they are finished. So little trust, Philip, in the Tory leadership. So little trust they say what they mean, that they'll do any of the things they say. But this, and so many of our audience certainly saying, look, you know, it's reform that they're looking to. Even if Tories and Reform had the same policies, identical policies on any of these issues, the reality is a lot of people say, well, but at least Reform are doing it because they've been saying it is for a long time, whether they've been under Brexit, UKIP or whatever, whereas the Tories are saying it because they need it to get elected, so they don't trust them.
Reform have been living it since their foundation. The Tories have been using the same old sound bites and are just trying to adjust the sound bites. Kemi Badenoch needs to completely revamp the message and get her party working together from a unity perspective, and to convince the voting public that they have actually changed. That isn't coming out with little bits and dribs and drabs here and there.
Do you think really she has been pushing to? She had a very good PMQs yesterday, on Chagos, but again, Farage kind of got a lot of the headlines for what he was saying about this. There is an element kind of, just sort of running to keep up and being behind the polls. That momentum. I mean, the Tories have got, money then goes to the money goes to whoever looks like they're going to win, basically. But they've got not enough money. They're worried about they're going to be able to keep their headquarters open. They're going to have to sack staff. A lot of their support drifting away to Reform. Do you think the Tories are basically on the back foot now?
Oh, completely on the back foot, and that's why she's been pushed to do this. And
would that be under any leader? Would that be the same under Robert Jenrick, do you think? Or well, I don't know, James Cleverly, who's another front runner?
Yes, under a number of the different leaders. Some have got more charisma, and you need someone who can front up and has got that charisma, that Boris-style presence.
She was seen as someone who has that.
But she's not proving that. Your PMQs yesterday, yes, she was good, but what she didn't do was take Starmer apart. There was an open goal there, and the open goal was the voice coach, and you barely touched on it, and she should have kicked the ball into the net when it got returned to her, kicked again and again and again and again. She doesn't. She bounced around too many different areas.
It's all about the tactics at that point, isn't it? Look, I'd love to take your calls. As I've just said, we've had a problem since I think the first half hour with our phone system. I'm unable to take your calls. Hopefully they'll be able to reboot it in the next news break, and we'll be able to get some calls for the Ian Collins show. I'm so sorry we're not getting your phone calls on air, and please don't think we're ignoring you. Just simply can't get them on air. We'll get to more of your messages hopefully, but we're going to take another quick break. Then we're going to talk to the wonderful Sharon Davies about those men who are no longer going to be allowed to compete in women's sports. Why? Because they're men. This is Talk, the home of common sense.
the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense with me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. 12:37 is the time. Philip Ingram's still with me. Get his thoughts on what our next guest says in a few moments. Delighted to welcome Sharon Davies back to the show. She is, of course, a swimmer, Olympic medalist, and author of the brilliant book Unfair Play: The Battle for Women's Sport. Very, very good afternoon to you.
Afternoon, Julia. Sorry to hear about your telephone calls, but we're here.
We're here. We've got you on the line, indeed. Well, it's annoying because you can see them, but you can't get to them. Sharon, I mean, happy days. We knew Donald Trump said he was going to do this, and he's done it. He's signed an executive order. Very, very, very clear. A lot of the headlines, and even like when I read it, it's like, trans athletes being banned from the Olympic Games or women's girls' sport. No, it's not. This is simply a ban on men. Yes. And on boys from competing in women's and girls' sport, which was where we were only a few years ago. But for some reason, some mad lunatics said it was a good idea that men and boys who said, I don't think I am a man or a boy, I think I'm a girl or a woman, that they should be allowed to compete against women. And we've seen exactly what we ended up with when we saw a woman being punched in the face repeatedly in the boxing ring in the last Olympics. What do you make of that announcement?
Yeah, absolutely. As you said, the title of the executive order is keeping men out of women's sport, and that is the whole point, really. It's not about banning any trans athletes. Trans athletes are really welcome in the world of sport. They just need to be able to compete against people of the same sex, and that's all we've been asking for from the word go.
You hateful, bigoted person, you. I mean, this is the thing. This is what is bizarre. And again, the headlines be trans people, banned, and we've seen, protests about fascism and goodness knows what in Washington, D.C. about this. But this is about fairness. And we spoke to Brendan O'Neill a little bit earlier on the show, and I know he's been a great ally on this as well. But watching all those amazing young women athletes and girls, standing around in the Oval Office, watching the president sign this and knowing that they're going to be safe. Because talk us through, I know you've written this brilliant book, Unfair Play, and you've been talking about this so many times. And, people try to shut you up, and you've lost a load of work and income as a result of speaking out and being such a fantastic fighter on this cause. But you've been motivated on this for a lot of years because of what you went through. So explain how significant this is.
It was really wholesome pictures, wasn't it, of all those young female athletes. And that's kind of why I did it. So the personal reason was because my generation competed against East Germans, who the IOC allowed to be pumped full of testosterone, did absolutely nothing to stop it. And for 20 years, they dominated women's sport. And many, many athletes, didn't win medals at all or picked up silver and bronzes when it should have been gold, including obviously myself. And I just did not want to see another generation of young girls lose out to things that were fair. Now, women's sport gets 4% of the sponsorship dollar in sport. Right, get your head around that. We are 51% of the world, and we get 4% of the money that comes into sport. So we have this tiny little piece of the cake. And now we're being told that we're not even allowed to have fair or safe sport anymore. Yeah. We've got to move over people who feel like a sex that they are not. Yeah. And we can show you all the peer-reviewed studies which shows that you cannot remove male biological physical advantage. So we were being told that we just had to suck that up. You just got to compete next to people who've got an advantage. And that was never fair. I just felt that was never fair. So I thought, I can't sit back and let this happen to another generation. I've got to speak out. And you're right, it's really impacted my work a lot, but I was in that position, I suppose, where I could just about afford it. Sadly, my mum died and she left me some money, so that kept me going.
No, but you should never have had to. You should never have been sort of, people attempting to cancel you for speaking out on this issue. We've had.
Oh, they absolutely cancelled me. I mean, yeah.
But no, but and that's my thing. Is like, you've really been doing this. This is from the heart. This is from the soul. But what was amazing? Some people saying, I don't know what the difference is, unless it's a contact sport. Oh, well, like boxing, watching a woman being punched in the head at tea time, for billions of people to watch that at the Olympics, and that's going to be absolutely fine. And it became, it went to everything. Oh, it's swimming. Well, what advantages does a swimmer have? What? Being taller, bigger lung capacity, stronger muscles, longer arms, bigger feet, bigger hands, and even down to things like you've explained to me, things like throwing the javelin, cycling. There is huge male advantage automatically if you've gone through male puberty.
Yeah, things like, you mentioned boxing, males hit 160% harder than females onto a less dense bone structure. Male Footballers kick 50% harder. We have a different cue angle, which is the angle between our hips and our knees, which gives us, males much better cadence. So therefore that really affects running and cycling in particular. There is such a vast difference, anywhere between 10 or 30% in Olympic sport. And we're talking about 10% in a swimming pool is half the length of the pool when people win gold medals by hundredths of a second.
Absolutely. I mean, it's almost like there was a reason why we had women-only sport. I mean, it's crazy, isn't it? But this is the thing. There was a lot of talk about how, when this became a big deal, OK, well, in some individual sporting bodies would say, OK, you're going to have to go through certain, hormone tests or testosterone tests or chromosome tests. We then even have queries about that. We have the Olympics and the World Boxing Federation in dispute over whether or not boxers who were not trans but who were clearly male fighting in the women's category. But then they were still allowing average male athletes like Leah Thomas to compete. Not Leah Thomas. What's his real name? 400.
William Thomas.
400. Plus as a male swimmer. But miraculously winning against all the women, all the girls in college when he was competing, pretending to be a woman, as he walked around the changing room with his penis out, openly in the changing room. I mean, how uncomfortable would that make the women feel if they spoke out? They were told you would lose your funding as a college athlete with your sponsorship and your career would be over. I mean, massive intimidation taking place, but also lots of young girls, even at secondary school level, just trying to get on, the netball team, the football team, the cricket team, being easily beaten by a boy with physical strength greater than them.
What we found, Julia, was that young girls were self-excluding. So, parents of girls that were involved in contact sports were worried sick that their kids are going to get injured, so they were taking them out. And girls were really being put off. And you mentioned Leah Thomas, where those girls were made to change with a fully intact 6'4" male for 18 months. And if they had a problem with it, they were told to be referred to a psychologist. All right. Yeah. And this was a male who made it obvious that he still fancied women. So they were put in an extremely difficult position. They had their scholarships.
Well, if he wasn't claiming to be trans, they would consider his behaviour to be criminal.
Yeah, I mean, also what's really interesting is we know of 3,500 victories that have been stolen by males.
Wow.
We know of over 11,000 races, and these are the ones we know about. So believe me, there will be an awful lot more. And we know of hundreds of injuries that have been caused, by contact activity, things like volleyball, where girls have been hit in the head by balls, by people that are spiking, are much taller, much stronger, much more explosive. Because obviously the more explosive the event, the bigger advantage of you being male. Yep. And we know we cannot remove that male physical advantage. So the answer was always a female protected category and an open and inclusive category where you come and you identify however you want, and we want to see you there. We want everyone to be involved.
Oh, I mean, I don't even approve of the trans category. You're still a man or a woman. I mean, you may not be.
It's an open category, Julia. It's not a trans category.
No, an open category is all. An open category is all very well, but it's going to be won by the men. Of course it is.
Of course it will be.
It's another male category, so let's call it what it is. But also, look, there's lots of people. We've seen people who've lost their athletic careers because they've been accused of doping, where they've actually taken a medicine that happens to have a banned ingredient. Maybe people had to choose between certain options in their lives. But
we were very bogged down with the testosterone thing. Yeah. Once you've gone through puberty, it's like boiling an egg. You cannot unboil it. All right. Yeah. So reducing testosterone has no effect whatsoever, and you can reduce extremely easily within 24 hours. And I know that because all those East Germans took an awful lot of testosterone and then passed all their drug tests. So, and we have no independent testosterone testing system. So even when we were saying to Leah Thomas, you've got to reduce your testosterone to 10 nanomorphs, 10 times what I have in my system. All right. We had no way to test them anyway.
No, so it's all meaningless.
Absolute waste of time.
It's all it's almost like we had a system that was really clear, and then we decided to give it. LA Olympics, they're being held, the next Olympics, 2028 in Los Angeles, and Donald Trump has made it really clear there will be no male athletes competing in women's sport, full stop, end of. Your passport needs to match your actual sex. I mean, it's going to be wider repercussions for this. Do you think this is the end of this? Do you think this is going to change? It's going to affect, school sport here, park run records and things like that. Is that the end of it, or is it just the first step?
Yeah, unfortunately, it is really just the first step. I mean, obviously, it's going to be positive for LA. What's also very interesting is all the candidates now to be head of the IOC are saying They will protect the female category. That's really good going forward. Fingers crossed that Seb Coe actually becomes the new head of the IOC, because he genuinely is the only candidate that will centre the athletes rather than the committee members of the IOC. And I think what we've got to do is understand that at the moment here in the UK, we are not protecting the female category. In things like golf, tennis, cricket, football, there's 80 males that I know of that are playing in the women's game. That we know of.
Can I pick you up on this?
Protecting 1%. Now, what's really important, what I can explain, is that they are protecting elite. That's 1%.
Yeah. We need to protect
99% of women and kids and girls are not being protected.
I'm only going to pick you up on one thing.
Push for that.
You're a massive hero of mine. Stop using the word female. Women, it's our word. Don't let, because well, the trans people are claiming they're women. No, well, they're not. There's no subcategory of woman. We're the only kind. There's no we are women.
I agree.
I don't like women. We're not female.
Biology.
We're women. We're female as well, but we don't give up the word woman to them. We don't. End of. Sharon, you are a hero. We all love you here at the station, and I know the audience does as well. Thank you so much for joining us. Sharon Davies, who should be an Olympic gold medalist swimmer. Philip Ingram, thoughts on this?
I'm in awe. You're a hero of mine, definitely. Because she's standing up for what is right, what is common sense, and has suffered for it. And that is a true definition of a hero. Yeah. Her and J.K. Rowling on this issue, I will hero worship them till the end of my days.
Again, J.K. Rowling didn't really have a cost, though. That's the thing. I mean, she's a hero as well, but the likes of Sharon Davies, they've been saying this a lot longer. 12:48 is the time. We're going to take a quick break. Then we're going to be talking about whether or not, well, actually, if you want to get rid of some of the trans madness, getting rid of social media for children under the age of 16 would be a good thing. It's certainly what Britain's head of counter-terrorism is suggesting. He says social media for children is like the cancer risk of smoking. That's up next. This is Talk.
And I bet you, at home, his wife is saying, why did she need to come to the home to do this, break lockdown rules for voice coaching? And as I said, I think it's a sheer hypocrisy that he went on and on and on about Boris having a piece of cake at a birthday, etc., when look at what he was doing, flouting the rules. Or what he did is change her status to essential worker. Why was a voice coach an essential worker?
Yeah, exactly right.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the home of common sense, with me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. Migrant also still here. Let's talk right now about what extraordinary statement from Britain's head of counter-terrorism. He has claimed that the harm created by social media on our children is similar to the cancer caused by smoking. This man is called Matt Jukes. He said his team has discussed the policy with colleagues in Australia, where they've got a very world's first ban on social media use by under 16s last year. But giving evidence to the Times newspaper's Crime and Justice Commission, he said the idea of introducing a similar ban here warrants, he says, serious attention and should be explored by ministers. Well, let's talk about this with Chris McGovern. He's chairman of the Campaign for Real Education. Good afternoon to you, Chris.
Hello there.
Thanks for joining us. Now, look, I've long believed, you know, mobile phones shouldn't be in the classroom. I want them literally put them in a locker, put them wherever, in reception at school. I don't want them in school disrupting lessons, disrupting what kids do. But a full-on social media ban, not just like a phone ban that people have been talking about. Would you support that for under 16s?
In a way, I think it's a no-brainer. I mean, we know this awful incident in Southport. The murderer there had access to horrible things on social media.
Social media. I mean, he was looking on, Googling horrible stuff online.
Yeah, he was doing that with all sorts of material available. Look, the counter-terrorism chief has said we should treat this problem like we treat smoking. You know, it's cancer. What I would do would probably go a lot further than you, Julia. I would just simply ban. I would apply the same law to alcohol. Same law to mobile phones as we apply to alcohol and smoking. I would ban them for under 18s.
Okay.
Then you solve the problem. We've got a real mental health crisis in this country and all sorts of other problems associated with social media. We should at least follow the example of Australia. And they're going to ban as you said, they're going to ban children's access to these sites.
I mean, look, I was very strict. I mean, like, you know, the Instagram rule and things like that. My daughter, nothing before the age of 13. She had a phone that she couldn't access this stuff. And luckily, I've got a husband in IT, so he can actually oversee these things. And when she first had a phone, she wasn't able to do anything but literally text and make a phone call. Just it was a safety thing for when we weren't with her. But I mean, my only worrying thing is about this is about how you police it. I mean, I'm very worried about social media, particularly, I mean, what the violence that boys are looking at, the porn that a lot of them are looking at, but they'll be able to do that on the internet anyway. The girls and their weird sort of Sun Page 3 poses and all their Instagram pictures and the desperate urge for likes. There's clearly an awful lot of, you know, the anorexia being pushed, the self-harm, the trans madness being pushed. There's a lot of nasty stuff going on there. But how do we ensure that we can ban it and make for our children and make them safe, but not actually impose on the freedoms of adults? Because the only way of doing that, surely, would be that adults have to prove they're adults.
It's a great challenge, Julia, but we shouldn't be put off by that. And we ban alcohol. Children still use alcohol.
They do.
We ban smoking. They still smoke. The challenge is there. We have to send a signal. Most of all, I think, we have to support parents, because at the moment, if a parent decides, for example, to restrict or remove a child's use of a mobile phone, a smartphone, then the child feels isolated and alone. And so it's really difficult. What the Australian Prime Minister said, we've got to look after parents back, we've got to support parents.
Yeah.
And therefore, the only real solution, I know it sounds very hard, you have to apply the same rules to mobile phones as you do to smoking and to alcohol. You have to ban them for under 18. And that sounds revolutionary. Oh, we can't do that, Chris. People say, well, we do it for alcohol. We do it for smoking.
But here's the thing. Well, we know that cigarettes are bad for everybody, and each cigarette is bad for you. It can damage your health. We know that alcohol for young bodies, developing bodies, for livers and things and brains can be very, very damaging. But actually, you know, I know plenty of teenagers who use social media in a really healthy way. They use it just simply as a way of keeping in contact. And I worry that describing it as the cancer, it's not the same. Some kids use it really badly, and it really, really badly impacts on them. Should we make laws because some kids don't manage their social media and some parents, frankly, don't do their job properly? Should we make laws for that?
Well, we should have, as I say, we have laws against smoking and alcohol, we have young children drinking alcohol and so forth. It isn't necessarily dangerous. In a way, you know, this problem of smartphones is a bit, and access to social media, it's a bit like heroin. We would say, look, you know, we don't allow children to have heroin, or adults for that matter. But we do have, they are allowed to have it when it's called morphine. So in a hospital, they use morphine, which is heroin. So of course, it all depends on how you use the drug. And these mobile phones are effectively access to a drug. It's addictive. You ought to read Baroness Greenfield's book, Mind Change. It is damaging children. It's changing children's brains. You know
that I completely. I definitely agree with that. Look, I don't think any young children should be looking even at screens or TV. I think that's so damaging to screens, to their brains. I have a funny feeling I could probably be persuaded on this one. Chris McGovern, Chris, chairman of the Campaign for Real Education, really appreciate you joining us. Very quick word from you, Philip Ingram. You're involved in counterintelligence. A counter-terrorism officer saying this.
Yeah, so social media is used to groom in a number of different ways. Matt Jukes...
sex paedophiles.
Exactly. Matt Jukes is looking at it from a counter-terrorism perspective rather than from a holistic perspective. So he's right...
Islamist extremism,
exactly. He's
right
to highlight it and to start the debate. We need to have a proper debate about it.
Our question is how we do it without... I'm quite happy for there to be a ban for children using it. I am.
Yeah,
Is how we manage to do that without infringing the rights of the individual. You know that the answer is going to be ID cards. It's always ID cards, and I just don't know where we go with that. Ian Collins is here to talk about what's happening on his show at 1 o'clock. What do you think
Blair
of that?
likes an ID. Well, the trouble is, if you ban social media, it's kind of almost pointless in the sense that it's the internet that's the problem, not just social media, because you can get to most social media via the internet.
I think your kids are a bit younger than mine. I mean, I see a lot of kids who they're obsessed with getting the likes. They're obsessed with this.
They're not in that territory. But like something like YouTube, we took YouTube off, so they couldn't get to YouTube.
You can watch YouTube. You can watch our stations.
Well, you can. Yeah, but when you're 6, and then they just went to the search engine and got YouTube that way. So they found a way around it.
Yeah.
So it's the internet.
Most kids can get around
there's always a
anything
workaround.
on the phone around, especially with their parents. What are you talking about today?
Do we need a